Welcome to our committee of the whole meeting today. Before I start, I'll ask if everybody have a good weekend, with it being a long weekend. Seeing lots of nods, that means it must have been a pretty good weekend for everyone. I'll call this meeting together at 9:31 a.m. And I will confirm that we have a quorum here with all members of council present, as well as the municipal clerk. Our territorial land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that the township of Allen-McCalderman is located on the Mississaugan-Anishinaabe territory and is the traditional territory of the Mississaugan-Anishinaabe. The township of Allen-McCalderman respectively acknowledges that the Mississauga Nation are the collective stewards and caretakers of these lands and waters in perpetuity, and that they continue to maintain this responsibility to ensure their health and integrity for generations to come. Moving on to the agenda, approval of the agenda, that the agenda for the committee of the whole meeting held on May 20th, 2025 be approved. Mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Ainsworth and seconded by Deputy Mayor Stover. All in favor? Motion is carried. There is one change to the schedule. We will be going into closed at 12:30 when we have a consultant coming in. So we'll get to where we are, and then at 12:30 we'll go into closed. So that's just for your information. Okay. Item 4, disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof. Seeing there is none, that'll be duly noted. And we have a rather long agenda today, so we're going to start off with 3 different delegations. And the first one is a verbal presentation by Dr. Julie, correct me if I'm wrong, Kapirka, okay. Thank you. Who's a consulting manager for Alderville First Nation, and she's accompanied by Jordan, and I didn't get your last name, Jordan.
McCarthy.
Okay. And you're also with the Alderville First Nation?
Yes.
So, ladies, we're pleased to have you here today, and we're going to turn it over to you, and we may have some questions after your pitch. Thank you. And thank you very much for coming today.
All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me here today. It's a pleasure to come, visit the council today and to have a good little chat about archaeology. And primarily, I came here today to help kind of with the planning situation in the township and to maybe answer some of your questions. I know there's been a lot of discussion going on recently about archaeology. So basically, I'll, introduce myself first, and then I'll give you a little bit of background, and then I'll go into why it's important, why archaeology is so important to do. And then I'll kind of talk a little bit of a case study story that happened just close by in Hastings in about 10, 12 years ago. So I grew up in Ottawa. I'm not from this area originally, but my father lived in Peterborough while I was growing up, so I spent a lot of my summers in Peterborough. I came to Trent University and I completed a Bachelor of Arts in Anthropology. I then went on to do a Bachelor of Education in Indigenous Studies. Came back to Trent, did a Master's in Archaeology, and then rounded out my experience in the academy with a PhD in Indigenous Studies. And my area of focus is archaeology and First Nations, and archaeology and the province, basically, and how those two intersect. And most of the time, there is a kind of a clashing of worldviews and perspectives, and that's where we see most of the challenges that arise. But once we understand what those differences are and how important archaeology is and why we do it, those challenges seem to dissipate. So it's an interesting date today for me because today actually there's a ceremony happening at Trent University opening the ground to start building a new college. And that new college is named after one of my late grade teachers, Anishinaabe elder from Curve Lake First Nation named Doug Williams, otherwise known as Gidigan Megazeban, and he passed away in 2022. Now he was one of the great knowledge keepers of the Anishinaabe, the Mississauga, and he taught me many, many things. And he would be here today with me. We would oftentimes visit municipalities, visit various, groups and communities to speak to this. And he would come here and he would speak with me. So basically, I'm acknowledging his spirit today. They're doing a groundbreaking ceremony at Trent, which I should be at, but I knew he would tell me to come here. I knew he would say, meet your commitment, because this was already scheduled way prior to getting the notification of that groundbreaking ceremony today. So I'm pleased to be here. He would be happy that I'm here, and I am continuing on the work that he started so many years ago. So one thing I would like to start with is just to give you a perspective of history. All right, so archaeology in Ontario, 14,000 years of history. Can you guys see this? This way. 14,000 years of history. So let's say that this line is the chronology of 14,000 years of history in this area. When the glaciers retreated, people moved into the area. Archaeology, we can bar none say that people were here 14,000 years ago. All this time, Anishinaabe people have been living here. When was the first non-Anishinaabe person or white European to come into this area? Anybody? This is a little bit of a lesson. What year was it that the very first white man walked in the forest?
The early 1600s?
Yeah. Do you know who it was?
No. Actually,
Champlain, right? So let's say Champlain came into the Forest area in 1615. So in a chronology of 14,000 years, let's put this like here, right? 1615, Samuel Champlain comes through the Kawartha area. When do the majority of the European settlers show up in this area?
early 1800s.
1800s, right? So let's put 1800s here, right? 1800s. And then here we are today, 2025. This is a picture that Doug would often, share with people, just to show in a chronology how much time the Anishinaabe people have been here prior to anybody showing up. That is a massive history. That is a 14,000 year history when we've only been here for a couple of hundred. So it's really important to keep that in mind. All of this history belongs to other people who were here prior to us coming. So just to set the stage in terms of the importance of archaeology to the Anishinaabe people. And I wanted to talk a little bit too about the 1923 Williams Treaties, because that is very relevant in terms of land use planning today and what treaties mean in terms of your responsibilities as a council and the responsibilities of the First Nation to the Crown. Municipalities are a creature of the Crown, so there is some obligations there. I'm not too sure how familiar everyone is with the Williams Treaties of 1923, but basically the 7 communities of the Williams Treaties, so I should name them right now. There's 3 Chippewa communities and 4 Mississauga communities. So we have Curve Lake First Nation, Alderville First Nation, Scoot Rock Island First Nation, and Hiawatha First Nation. And then we have the Chippewas of Rama, the Chippewas of Georgina Island, and the Chippewas of Christian Island or Bosa Light, which is in Georgian Bay. Those are the nations that comprise the Williams Treaties First Nations. And in and around the early 20s, because of the encroachment of settlement, people were noticing that their hunting grounds were being encroached upon. And this is like the Anishinaabe people who are out there practicing their traditional culture, practicing their harvesting and hunting. And they were being shot at. Their traps were being, the animals, fur-bearing animals were being removed from the traps broken and left on the ground. So the community started raising the alarm and started coming to the government in Ottawa saying, our territories are being encroached upon. We can no longer practice our traditional culture. So the government created a commission, the Williams Treaties Commission, basically visited all of the communities, and within a matter of weeks, boom, the treaty was done. And really, in terms of treaty negotiations, it happened within a matter of 6 weeks. And then the treaty was signed, and that was that. And so what had happened is they told the people that they needed to take the treaty after it was signed or whatever, and bring it to Ottawa to type it up. And they bring it back, a typed version for the people to sign the actual official document. When they brought it back, they brought back an extra clause inserted in there called the basket clause, of which the communities were not aware. That basket clause basically said that they had given up everything that day, the right to hunt, the right to fish, the right to harvest. And Doug would often jokingly say that was the day they took away our right to breathe. So all of a sudden it became illegal for people to literally feed their families. The game wardens descended on the area. They jailed the Anishinaabe people who were out there fishing, hunting. And as soon as the interpretation from the government that they had given up all of their rights, they were protesting immediately. They said we would have never signed anything that, took away our right to hunt, our right to eat. So basically, throughout the 1920s and 1930s and 40s, the Anishinaabe communities were starved, literally starved by the province of Canada to feed their families because they were thrown in jail. People were hiding under white sheets, ice fishing on the ice, flat on their bellies, so they could get the fish out of the hole without being caught. And basically, this is the only treaty in Canadian history ever to have said to have extinguished the rights of First Nations to hunt and fish and trap. So it was, it wasn't accepted, and the communities protested immediately. 95 years later, 2018, and I'm sure you've heard of this, the 2018 Williams Treaty Settlement Agreement. So basically, that treaty, the 1923 treaty, it was set right. Basically, that was an unjustified, basically placing on the First Nations, they couldn't have the right to even be who they were. So in 2018, basically what happened there, that both levels of government apologized to all 7 nations and reaffirmed the hunting and fishing and, gathering rights that already existed. Now, while the communities weren't able to get the 1923 reversed, that Williams Treaty is reversed because of the basket clause, because it was signed, what they were able to do, and I'll just share this with you, these are the pre-Confederation treaties, and you can just pass it around. The pre-Confederation treaties that already existed prior to 1923, and those we have Treaty 20, Treaty 27 1/4, the Crawford Purchase, the Gunshot Treaty, Treaty 18, Treaty 16, and Treaty 5. All of those were basically ratified prior to Canada becoming Canada. They existed in terms of relationships between the Anishinaabe and the Chippewa that were here in the Crown. They all occurred in the late 1700s and early 1800s. The courts could not say to the Anishinaabe that those areas are not, that your rights have not been removed from those areas ever. So in 2018, it was a reaffirmation of the pre-Confederation treaties that existed prior to Canada, that the harvesting rights were reestablished. All the rights in terms of harvesting, gathering, hunting, fishing, but also including the right to your cultural heritage, the right to take care of your burials, the right to take care of your ancestors, the right to have cemeteries, and so forth. So that occurred in 2018. Now, it's not well known. As you know, COVID hit in 2020. So really we had 2 years and then COVID hit. So 3 years behind the implementation of that new settlement agreement. So we're a little bit behind. Both levels of government are behind. And I have to admit and sympathize with municipal councils all over the territory that there has not been good direction from the governments to you, from the province, from the feds, in terms of what does the 2018 settlement agreement mean? It covers a huge swath of Southern Ontario, multiple municipalities all across the board. So what we're trying to do, and what I often try to do, is I try to help and try to bring some direction and clarity and guidance, because you're not receiving that from your, policymakers up above. So what I'm going to talk about today is archaeology and why it's so important to do. And I know that people are like not used to doing it. You're not used to having to do archaeology if someone's putting in a deck or expanding their house or what have you. But in areas that have not had archaeology done before, it is within your best interest to do so, not only for the property owners' protection, but also in terms of protecting the rights of First Nations. So the first thing I'm going to do is go over the relevant policies that you all would be familiar with in terms of archaeology and why it needs to be done. Well, let's start with the, maybe you're most familiar with the PPS, the Provincial Policy Statement 2024. Very interesting. In the introduction, page 1, Ontario will continue to recognize the unique role Indigenous communities have in land use planning and development, and the contribution of Indigenous communities' perspectives and traditional knowledge to land use planning decisions. Meaningful early engagement and constructive cooperative relationship building between planning authorities and Indigenous communities will facilitate knowledge sharing and information and informed decision-making in land use planning. So that's interesting. It's right in the preamble, right in the vision of the PPS. So it kind of sets the stage there. And then, when you get into that policy, the meat and potatoes of the policy, we come to section 4.6, which is cultural heritage and archaeology. And it is very, very clear in number 5 what the direction is to municipalities. Planning authorities shall engage early with Indigenous communities and ensure their interests are considered when identifying, protecting, and managing archaeological resources, built heritage resources, and cultural heritage landscapes. So right there in your policy, it has a directive there to shall engage early with Indigenous communities. And the importance of engaging early with us is so that archaeological sites can be avoided and protected before they're found. Basically, if we can locate an archaeological site, we can avoid and protect it, and it doesn't have to go any further, and everybody, you know, your development can occur, what have you, and the rights of the First Nations are protected. So both of those things can happen, and I'll explain that when I end with a little story. But in terms of the applicable laws, we'll move on to the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, affectionately known as UNDRIP. United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, and I believe it's Article 11 and 12. Speaks specifically to the rights. And I'm gonna ask Jordan to read Article 11 and 12 because I forgot my glasses. I'm in total denial. I'm actually needing glasses all the time. So I'm gonna ask her to read those two. Article 11 and 12.
Article 11, Indigenous people have the right to practice and revitalize their cultural traditions and customs. This includes the right to maintain, protect, and develop the past, present, and future manifestations of their cultures, such as archaeological and historical sites, artifacts, designs, ceremonies, technologies, and visual and performing arts and literature. Number 2, states shall provide redress through effective mechanisms, which may include restitution developed in conjunction with Indigenous peoples with respect to their cultural, intellectual, religious, and spiritual property taken without their free, prior, and informed consent or in violation of their laws, traditions, and customs. And Article 12 states Indigenous peoples have the right to manifest, practice, develop, and teach their spiritual and religious traditions, customs, and ceremonies. The right to maintain, protect, and have access in privacy to their religious and cultural sites. The right to the use and control of their ceremonial objects, and the right to the repatriation of their human remains. Article 12.2 states shall seek to enable the access and or repatriation of ceremonial objects and human remains in their possession through fair, transparent, and effective mechanisms developed in conjunction with Indigenous peoples concerned.
Thank you very much. So UNDRIP, came to us in about 2007. Canada has since adopted UNDRIP into law. It is known as UNDA, the United Nations Declaration Act. This is Canadian law. Similar to the Williams Treaty settlement agreement, it is still being implemented. So we're still at the beginning phases of understanding how UNDRIP affects Canadian law and what that means. Essentially, what I would focus on is the free, prior, informed consent piece, because that is an integral part of the UNDRIP declaration. All right, now moving on, another document you may be familiar with is the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the TRC. Article 57. Jordan, please.
We call upon federal, provincial, territorial, and municipal governments to provide education to public servants on the history of Aboriginal peoples, including the history and legacy of residential schools, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, treaties and Aboriginal rights, Indigenous law, and Aboriginal Crown relations. This will require skills-based training in intercultural competency, conflict resolution, human rights, and anti-racism.
Thank you. So again, section 57 of the TRC, makes this recommendation to municipalities and the province and such. That has been slow to roll out. I know there are a lot of trainings going on, a lot of cultural sensitivity, educational workshops going on, but really it hasn't happened at the speed at which we would have hoped, because the TRC is now 10 years old. So 10 years later, how educated are we as municipalities in terms of Indigenous history and Indigenous rights, Indigenous treaties? So there is still a lot of work to be done. So moving on to the next piece of policy direction for municipalities when it comes to archaeology, This is called the criteria for evaluating archaeological potential, a checklist for the non-specialists. So this, everybody tends to use this in terms of deciding whether or not to do archaeology. What is very interesting, because it gives you a bunch of, questions. You tick off yes or no, and then it gives you direction. Like if yes, call an archaeologist. If no, continue on, or if no, you don't have to do archaeology. What is very interesting about this checklist is questions 4 and 5 in particular. Number 4, is there Aboriginal or local knowledge of archaeological sites on or within 300 meters of the property and project area? How is a municipality to answer that unless they speak to the communities, right? We see these filled out all the time. However, we've never been spoken to about whether that's a yes or no question. Number 5, is there Aboriginal knowledge or historically documented evidence of past Aboriginal use on or within 300 meters of the property? For the Kawartha Lakes region and for any lake, it's going to be an unequivocal yes every single time. There is Aboriginal knowledge about the entire area of the Kawartha Lakes, the rivers, the Autonomy, the Indian River, Rice Lake, Stony Lake, Chemong Lake, Buckhorn Lake, all of those. Yes, that's going to say yes. Once you get to number 7, it says, if you've answered yes to any of the above questions, do not complete the checklist. Instead, you need to hire a licensed consultant archaeologist to undertake an archaeological assessment of your property. So it's very interesting because what happens is most people really want to go on to number 8, which talks about has the property been disturbed? And a lot of people go, oh, the property's already been disturbed. There's a driveway, there's something, it's been done. Let's tick off yes, and it's disturbed. And it says, okay, no, we don't have to go on. But you've already answered yes to number 5, which will always be yes in this area of the world. So you don't even get to go onto the disturbance question. So that's a mistake a lot of people make and something we have to continuously circle back on. So the guidance in here is clear. This, in concert with early engagement, will allow you to check off this checklist, with the proper information. I should also note here in your provincial policy statement, in 4.6, cultural heritage and archaeology, number 4 basically encourages municipalities to create archaeological master plans. An archaeological master plan will be a tool that your planning department can use in terms of archaeological potential across the municipality. It will let you know when archaeology needs to be done or not done by the document itself, because the study has been done and you will know what areas are clear, what areas still need to be done. It is an exceptional tool. I highly recommend any municipality put that in their budget in consecutive years to make sure it gets done, but it has been a fabulous tool for those that do have it. And now I'll just end with a story that's quite close to home and might resonate much more with you in terms of the reason why archaeology is so important, not just for First Nations and for Anishinaabe cultural heritage and for preserving, the past that in many cases has been wiped right off of the face of the earth, basically. Property in Hastings, probably about 12 to 15 years ago, little cottage on the river. The property owner wanted to expand their basement, make it bigger than a crawl space, and lo and behold, they ran into a burial mound. And it was not until the excavator saw that skull roll out in front of him that he stopped. By that point, he had pulverized through 25 Indigenous ancestral remain bodies, pulverized, fractured, and disarticulated and spread now all over the site. Because at that point now, you're into an open, active archaeological site and a burial site investigation, there is no opportunity to do a stage 1 or a stage 2 to try to avoid and protect the area. You are now in a full-blown open archaeological dig. You have no choice. This property owner cost them upwards of $90,000 to clear up the desecration of 25 individuals on their property. When she could have called in an archaeologist to do a stage 1, 2. Very quickly, the archaeologist would have demarcated that burial amount, bar none, found where the limits of that site was, and we could have avoided and protected that site in its entirety. And perhaps she could have expanded her basement somewhere else or onto the other side of the property or something, right? So in that case, had the property owner done the right thing and done the archaeological study, that stage 1, 2 would have been $3,000 to $4,000 maybe. Now she was facing over upwards of $90,000. So this is the type of thing we want to try to avoid for property owners as well. It's within their best interest. Another quick story, similar, I think it was a property on the Trent River. Gentleman wanted to put a boathouse in right at the shoreline. But because the municipality of Trent Hills, because of that one first story I told you, sent out a communique to all of those people that lived on that shoreline with a big polygon on top of the property saying this area is highly potential for burials, high potential for archaeology. We recommend that you do an archaeological study. If you are doing anything to your backyard, whether it's landscaping, building a deck, a boathouse, what have you. This gentleman followed those directions, called an archaeologist, said, hey, I want to put a boathouse here. What's going on? Archaeology was done, and sure enough, there was a site found, because I can tell you, within 300 meters of water, almost certainly you will find an archaeological site, bar none. Found a little lithic scatter, which is lithics are just stone tools and debitage from making a stone tool. And basically found the limits of the site. It wasn't very large. So the gentleman said, well, what can I put my boathouse on the other side of my shoreline? That area had been cleared archaeologically. So he put his boathouse on the right-hand side instead of the left. The left-hand side was protected by some landscape stone and registered, you know, with the Ministry of Citizenship and Multiculturalism as an archaeological site, and it was avoided and protected. So property owners still got their boathouse, First Nations got a site protected and avoided in perpetuity. So everybody's happy, right? So it's trying to, you know, do things in a good way together rather than apart, and avoid, you know, potentially desecrating of burial sites, which is not a good thing, and also protect property owners in terms of, you know, the cost that it could be when you get to go too far down the road of an archaeological dig. So I'll end there. I'm sorry, I wasn't expecting to speak for so long, but we did start a couple minutes late, so really there should be 5 minutes left for questions. So thank you very much.
Both of you. Does council have any questions? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Lobo. To you, Doctor, I really appreciate you coming today and explaining this. And I can see and hear the passion that you have and the time that you have spent in your life studying this. And thank you for that. I really appreciate it. I've learned quite a bit.
Thank you very much.
Go ahead, Councilor O'Neill.
Well, thank you. Yeah, very interesting presentation. I do have 2 questions, if I may. The first, am I understanding correctly that this should be part of every building permit application? I know we are already looking at it with zoning applications or reapplications, but you're nodding that.
There's a gap, and I've been meaning to work on this gap in that policy for many years. It's just really hard because we're really low capacity in our offices, so it's just me, and now it's Jordan, you know, dealing with all this. But there is a gap, because if you apply for a building permit, it doesn't trigger an OP or a ZBA or anything that would otherwise be shared with the public, right? So we only become aware of things that are shared with the public under the Planning Act, and that's when we flag them. But we're hoping that municipalities will flag them before they even get to us, because sometimes we can't get to them all, because, you know, you see how big the territory is. I get planning applications from all of that across the entire territory. So when there's a bill, and so what happened in Hastings was the property owner only needed a building permit to expand her basement, had no idea about the potential for archaeology there. There was nothing that triggered anything. That's one of the big gaps where municipality should know any waterfront property has that high risk potential, and could have maybe, you know, guided her or offered her direction in terms of get an archaeological study, please, before you begin this work. Could have avoided that whole situation.
Follow up.
It is a different question, but is there a resource that you can provide so we could put it up on our website so that when people are getting permits or whatever they're seeking, they can locate this information?
Yeah, and this is where an archaeological master plan, that would be your tool. It would be up there for everyone to see. Basically, in lieu of doing that, what the municipality of Trent Hills did was send out a memo to their waterfront, you know, property owners, showing like a big polygon on, especially the area of burials that was known. So something like that would help, but really it's the archaeological master plan document that would be available to everybody in terms of the high risk areas.
Mike, you have something?
Yeah, through you, Mayor. Thank you, Jody. Very much educated on it. as far as, what you brought today was great, but I do have a couple of questions also, is because, you know, you talk, so frustration for us and frustration for residents is for this being implicated, yes, it's done poorly, I agree 100%. And, because it just started in the last couple of years, obviously, through the way the treaty probably for 2023, probably when it really actually started, maybe in 22.
For your area here, it started when I came to Oliver. So I would say June of 2023, when you started getting requests for archaeology on the territory, because they did not have a consultation manager prior to me coming in for about 4 years.
So Julie, with everything, like there's no dispute resolution for any of this here. You know, we're getting assessments asked to do, and I understand what you say with 14,000 years and stuff. But typically with the lakes, we got archaeological assessments being done because some people are calling runoff off the field, a stream. So do you have any help with that? And you know, you talk about the cost, maybe $3,000, but some of our residents pay $13,000 for an assessment. And then recently we just had an alder from Oliver First Nation come down and sit and watch. That was $150 an hour for the residents. And so these costs are added on to the cost of an assessment and the cost of a setting. It's really costing the residents a lot of money to do this. I mean, the $2,000 or $3,000 that you're talking about, it probably could be. So I don't know if there's an area where we could put a team together or a group together to kind of talk and hash out these issues and we can find out why. It's kind of that costful process of it is getting at hand.
Yeah.
And I am familiar with the list, and I am familiar, like we've had one that's had 100 loads of fill brought into a piece of property, and it was still asked to do an archaeological assessment on it, and they couldn't do it because it was too much of bad fill in there. So I guess they didn't finish doing it, but it still cost the resident $6,000-7,000 to have that done. So not to say that it's not respected, just to say that we have to have some kind of an avenue to say, okay, where can we make this better? Because of all the other costs that residents have to, you know, build a deck, do a new garage, build a house, get the severance, the assessment or rezoning or anything like that. So yeah, it is a cost for the residents. And if we could come up with some kind of roundtable discussion on, you know, how that we can make that a little better issue, make that easier to take for our residents and for us to be able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I know what you're talking about. So first of all, in terms of archaeological assessments and, you know, if someone's putting in a deck or something like that, we would never have an elder sit in on that ever. So I'm wondering if you're dealing with a company called HDI, Haudenosaunee Development Institute, if they've been around, because they are coming from southwestern Ontario and trying to insert themselves in eastern Ontario, and exactly what you're saying, charging all this money for things that are not typically done. And so we are addressing HDI concerns with other municipalities as we speak. I get at least once a week, either a developer or a municipality calling us for help in terms of how to deal with that particular. They're not a First Nation, but they present themselves as a First Nation. They're a entity, a company. So I would definitely, perhaps maybe we could have a meeting in the future to discuss how we address them. Because right now we have actually our internal lawyers are working on a statement, which we'll share with you, like a press release, basically, to let people know. It's a problem, and it's painting us all with that brush, and it's certainly not that way. And we have also been very helpful in terms of, for example, there's a burial site found in Warkworth recently, you know, and we are helping that community member and deal with that, not charging him exorbitant amounts of money, giving him labor for free, helping him with the carbon-14 dating, taking on that cost ourselves so that we can establish like what time frame we're talking about. So we are in, you know, the business of making relationships and having things work out for both the property owner and the First Nation in a you know, reasonable fashion. Absolutely. And I can't stress more the importance of that archaeological master plan, because then there's no fighting. If there it is, boom, you have to do archaeology if you're in these areas, right? In terms of bringing in fill and all that, again, I would have to look at that specific case, you know what I mean? Because certainly if there's a record of that much fill being brought in, we can say that there's no point in digging into China to try to find something. Right? So there's always things that we can do. But certainly, we want to address that. We don't want to be unreasonable. We don't want property owners to feel like they're being taken advantage of, certainly. We like the win-win situations, you know, with the property owners we have worked with and things have worked out for both sides.
So it might take a little bit longer to, for the owner to get their building permit or something, but it would be probably a great idea to do this, what you say, if we had an avenue where you could get together and assess. Maybe not everyone, but some of these ones that are contentious, to be able to look at it as a partner and go, okay, yeah, this is why it needs to be done, or yeah, no, it doesn't need to be done, as part of the,
Yeah,
number 8 in there, so it talks about what the bill.
yeah.
You talked about maps. Is that the map where the areas of natural interest would be in that, on all those areas?
Yes, yeah, and so right now that map is, it's still being finalized. So we have, basically Treaty 20 and this one, Treaty 27.25, that are actually Crown map. They're not. The rest are, the hard boundaries are still being drawn, but we have those two from the province. And they're still, you know, in the process of implementing it. But I am responsible for all planning applications that come across my desk. I try to keep it to this part of, you know, because Alderville's over here, and these are the treaties that Alderville is most concerned with, because the people came from the Bay of Quinte, right? This is more of a Curve Lake, you know, Scugog thing, and we're all involved down here. But it's a huge area, and it's really tough to, you know.
So what happens if
Mike,
someone,
we're gonna have to,
Yeah.
sorry, make your last one.
last question. So what happens if they do find something, what's the process of, dealing with, remains or artifacts?
Okay, so if they do find stuff, so archaeology works in 4 stages. Stage 1 is a background desktop research that basically tells you if there's potential or not, which means you have to then go out to a stage 2, do some test pitting. Test pits occur every 5 meters, or if it's a farmer's field, it's just walking in 5-meter transects, looking at the ground. If you do find something, then basically you move on to what's called a stage 3. The stage 3 assessment will determine the limits of that site, how big it is. We'll do a 1-by-1 unit basically to see what's there. Over here, we have a grid kind of thing, and we'll lay out, trying to figure out where the limits of that site are. Once the limits of the site are delineated, that whole area can be avoided and protected. If not, if your development has to use that spot, then you have to go to a stage 4, which is full on mitigation. The whole thing needs to be recorded and removed, and that can be upwards of hundreds of thousands of dollars to do that. So avoidance and protection is what the ministry wants, it's what we want, and it's what property owners should want as well. So that's the goal, right? If you find stuff, you can avoid and protect. That's what we want to do. But like the lady in Hastings, you cannot avoid and protect that anymore. You've already desecrated it. So you're into a stage 4, basically. No choice, right?
Julie, I have one quick one.
Yeah.
We used to do it, send it just to Alderville. Now we've increased that to different ones. If you're looking at them all, should we not just be able to send them to Alderville for their comments?
Well, you'll no, I can't give that to you until they're totally defined, because I don't want there to be any mistake with the boundary. No, the ministry sends you guys lists of who you need to send stuff to, who you need to consult with. That's not up to us, that's up to the ministry. We have been trying to help the ministry for years to, you know, ration down that list, because to me, it's everyone and their uncle is getting planning applications, and I don't think it's necessary, but we're still working on that. But that's the direction that you are all given from the province, right?
Thank you. Okay, I want to thank you, Doctor and Jordan, for coming today, making a presentation to us. Doctor, you may know my Paul, do you know Paul at the university?
Paul
I
Prince?
I don't know his last name.
Oh,
He's an archaeologist.
Paul. Without his last name, I knew a Paul Prince once, but.
Okay, no, anyway, it doesn't matter. But thank you very much, thank you very much for coming and making your presentation. We probably may have some more questions, but we know who to talk to now and get along. So thank you very much.
Okay, you're very welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have report from the Integrity Commissioner, and that's for 2024 annual report. It's my understanding, Jeffrey and Janice are going to join us this morning. I see Janice, so please Janice, thank you very much for attending virtually, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and good morning, Mayor and members of council. Jeff Abrams will not be joining me this morning. He has a conflict on the calendar, so I'm all you've got.
We're just let's see if we can turn your volume a little bit louder.
Okay, mine is at the top. Mine is at the max. So, all right, I don't know if you're able to turn me up over there.
We'll just speak close to the mic again.
Okay, I'm speaking as close as I can.
Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
I can, yes.
Good. Well, I'm here to provide you with some brief comments with respect to your annual report. We are your Integrity Commissioner and also your closed meeting investigator. And so the way we present our annual report, you will see in hard copy, which is I take it before you electronically or hard copy. We explain a bit about what an integrity commissioner's role is. That's really for the public to fully understand. Our role involves really three categories. That's how we sort of approach it. One is to provide support on policy development and education. And in that capacity, we support staff in reviewing any policies, the code of conduct or council staff relations policies, et cetera, that have ethical components. And in this role, we provided training for council in June of 2024. So we had the opportunity to work with you in that regard. The second category that we provide service in, or that an integrity commissioner is expected to serve in, is in terms of providing advice to members of council and members of local boards. Local boards include advisory committees. And in that capacity, our advice is provided in writing to the member, and that advice is binding. The member can rely on that advice and know that if they follow that advice, and provided they have disclosed all of the salient facts to us, that that advice will be binding on us. In other words, what that means is they can count on that advice and that the integrity commissioner cannot later change their mind. So that's the purpose of having binding advice that's provided by legislation. So, and in that regard, the advice that we provide to individual members when they reach out to us, it is confidential advice. And the point of that is to ensure that members don't feel that they've exposed themselves by reaching out. The advice is then it's confidential. They understand what their ethical obligations are, what the statutory obligations are, and they can govern themselves accordingly. So in this capacity, we have responded to 11 requests for advice over the course of the period covered in this particular annual report. And so the third category is the category of complaints, and the legislation calls them inquiries because not every complaint comes to us as a full-blown complaint. Often integrity commissioners are confronted with complaints that really are more of inquiries that can be resolved through explanations. And so, in fact, you will see that our approach, Jeff and my approach as principals integrity, is to try to avoid becoming weaponized and to try to find solutions rather than to bring a public report. So where we can resolve a matter through a disposition, we do so. And that resolution or disposition will explain why a complaint investigation is not going to conclude in a public report. And we try to make that an opportunity for coaching and training. We often turn our minds to what can we do to inform and educate and make sure that the governance structure works as well as possible without the necessity of a public report, which can often create as much difficulty for a municipality which is already contending with some challenges, as all municipalities do. So I guess all of which is to say, if we can avoid bringing a splashy report, we certainly do. And in the context of our work for you over the period covered by this report, we have received 7 complaints, and we concluded all of them without a public report. In other words, each of them was concluded with a disposition to the complainant with a full explanation as to why it was not proceeding further or why we felt it was satisfactorily resolved. And that disposition letter also goes to the respondent or respondents on the matter. Occasionally, when we feel it's important for other members of council, and this is a rare exception, we will provide that disposition to the other members of council just to make sure there's a level playing field. And that did occur in one instance in Alnwick Haldimand. So what we say about disposition letters is we do not consider them confidential. We provide them as correspondence or communication to the individual parties. As I say, in the rare exceptional case, we may copy them to the senior administrator or another member of council. We do not consider them as confidential. It's not, they're always drafted with an eye to it very well may become public, because that certainly is our experience, that it's not unknown to see a disposition letter posted somewhere on social media, or somebody puts it out in some kind of newsletter. So we certainly, when we're crafting a disposition letter, are mindful that it's not a confidential document. It's simply a matter of a full explanation as to why a matter is being resolved without a report. And so that's our position on that. We have not had a need to bring a public report throughout the period covered by this annual report. And so, in a sense, we feel that the framework as it exists is working relatively well. It enables individual members of council, and really council as a whole, or the senior staff, be it the clerk or the CAO, to have access to us as a resource. And at the same time, we think we're avoiding becoming weaponized to the greatest of our ability, because that is always the risk. In the current political environment in Ontario over the past couple of years, it's certainly the case that it's easy to become weaponized. So we try very hard to find solutions, to provide robust explanations, to make sure everybody really has a good understanding. And I would say generally what we like to do is make sure we get a sort of a sense that people are kind of nodding in agreement. Oh, okay, I kind of get it. I kind of get where this landed and why. And that makes us feel like, okay, yeah, we're kind of providing the resource and accountability that was intended by this framework. Now, one of the things we do in our annual report is to provide a little bit of, I guess, anecdotal observation from around the province that we think will be instructive for councils. And from our vantage point, because we serve over 60 municipalities in Ontario, we do get to see what are sort of the key topical issues that repeatedly arise. So one of those issues is disclosure of confidential information from closed meetings. And so I wanted to just say a couple of words around this. Now, there's sort of two sides of the coin. And one is that council members have a clear obligation to maintain confidentiality around matters which come to them in closed. And that is sort of a critical rule that we will come down hard on if that is to occur. But the other side of that coin is that council has an important decision to make, and it is council's decision when an item needs to be enclosed, with the exception of one provision in the Municipal Act. All those other provisions are council's discretion. Council decides. So it can be a recommendation of staff. It's typically senior management will suggest, oh, this ought to be closed because of X, Y, Z. Ultimately, it's council's discretion. And ultimately, council can decide, you know what? We're going to look at this enclosed. We're going to give it some consideration. But at the end of the day, we may decide that we're not going to, we'll put it in open to receive it because there's really nothing there that meets the criteria of those rules. So that's council's decision to make always. And in many cases, I know I just want to speak to sometimes this misunderstanding that communication that may be critical, whether it's verbal or in writing, that criticisms must necessarily be enclosed. And that's absolutely not the case. There certainly may be circumstances where very pointed or very disparaging or very personal criticisms of rank and file staff, you might want to deal with those. Certainly, council likely wouldn't be seeing those, but if you were to see them, they would want to be enclosed. But otherwise, typically criticisms, certainly criticisms involving members of council or senior staff, typically are not enclosed. They, depending on what they are, of course, if you're having performance appraisal type comments, that would be enclosed. But aside from that, it's fair ball for members of council or members of boards to make comments about where they think improvements are needed. And those are not certainly automatically or perhaps ever subject of closed meeting protections. In other words, closed meeting is not meant to protect council from feeling uncomfortable. That's not the purpose of the Municipal Act closed meeting provisions. The purpose is to protect the interests of certain other parties on very specific, well-defined occasions. So the litmus test should never be, oh, are we uncomfortable with this? No, that is not the test. The test is, does this fit a criteria under the Municipal Act? And where there's questions about it, council can always say, you know what, we're going to receive this in open. So that's a council discretion. There's other areas that we touch on when we talk about issues that arise around the province. And certainly one that comes up frequently is the issue of disparagement. And this is something that probably does not necessarily apply at all to Alnwick Haldeman. From everything that we've observed in the many years we've been your integrity commissioner, we, I think, would say there has not been examples of disparagement, disrespect, incivility, or what have you, that kind of thing. But it's always something to be mindful of. It's something we do see in some municipalities around the province where microaggressions creep in and become a form of harassment. So it's just sort of a generic comment that we see that around the province. Resolving conflicts of interest is another area that we touch on in this, and we think that members of your council have a very good handle on recognizing your own conflicts of interest. And of course, that is probably one of the key areas that we provide individual confidential advice on. And it has not, it seems to be well understood and has not caused a lot of discomfort or concerns at all during this most recent period. And finally, we talk a little about staying in your lane. And by that, it's about making sure that there's a proper handoff to staff when there's actually operational work to be done. So council makes the decision, and then council directs staff, hey, this is our decision, this is what we want done. And then there's a handoff, and staff is required to follow through and implement the handoff. But council should then stay out of that operational implementation, if you will. we say a few words in our annual report about strong mayor powers. I don't know if that's necessarily germane, so I think I'll end my comments there. And I'm open to any questions that you may have. Otherwise, we think this is generally a good news report. We think it provides a snapshot of activity from our perspective that seems to be working well. We encourage members of council who have questions to continue to allow us to assist you in resolving matters to the best of our ability to be a resource for you. And we say the same to Clerk Cartledge, who has been very helpful to us, and to CAO Dawson as well. So we certainly look forward to continuing to serve you and working with you to support good governance in Alnwick-Haldeman. Thank you.
Thank you, Janice. Any comments from council? Mayor Catherine?
Just to say thank you for that report.
I guess I had one, and it goes down to, now maybe you did explain it well enough, but operational versus council decisions, that can be sometimes a challenge.
Yes, through the mayor, it can be a challenge. I think it's sometimes it's more evident how challenging that can be in a small municipality where there are fewer hands on deck, if you will. There are fewer, bench strength is not as, you don't have the bench strength of a great big municipality that may have 2,000 or 3,000 staff. And it becomes, I think, challenging to make sure that the handoff is, in a way, respectful of staff's role. Staff need to carry out their role. So it can't be that the members of council are, once council's made a decision to go in a certain direction, and this may be a matter of routine. For example, it may be a matter of routine that, okay, this is how certain complaints are going to be handled. There's a protocol, they're handed off, and off they go. It's inappropriate for a member of council then, for example, to engage behind the scenes to try to put their thumb on the scale to get it moving in a certain direction or another. That's problematic. That getting out of your own lane and trying to push it in a certain direction, that is problematic. For matters that are not routine, for matters that may require a council decision, then it's the council decision that prevails, that is to tell staff, hey, this is what we're doing, and the ball is in your court to do it. And then from time to time, you're going to probably get a report back from staff on what's happening. It's not to say that you, particularly as mayor, you probably are in the office a fair amount of time. It's not to say that you can't be informed or be aware, but that line is where the staff are no longer implementing a council direction, for example, and might tend towards implementing really an instruction from a member of council. And that it's not unheard of, but that is where the line is. It's the key is to stay on your side of the line as an elected official and as a member of council.
I'll just give you a personal comment. I like to think if there's a policy there, that staff should handle as per the policy, and if they have trouble with the policy, then bring it to council's attention so that we can make a decision as to whether to change the policy or continue to follow it.
That's exactly right, Mayor Logal. That's exactly right. You've got it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other comments? Janice, thank you very much for your annual report, and we look forward to hearing from you again next year, I guess, from now.
Great.
Have a safe day.
You have a good day. Bye now.
I'll read the resolution that the Committee of the Whole received the 2024 Integrity Commissioners Annual Report for information. Now you move and seconded, moved by Councillor Booth, seconded by Councillor O'Neill. Any further discussion? All in favor? Motion's carried. Okay, we're going to move on to our third delegation. And this is regarding the Haldeman Community Memorial Arena Needs Assessment. And today we have with us Jonathan Hack, who is the Sierra Planning and Management. And John, you have a guest with you today. I'm not sure, I believe I've mentioned, but I can't remember your first name.
Philip Beck.
Philip, thank you very much for coming. I'll just, before we start, I'll make a comment that you're here today to make your presentation.
Yes.
And council may have some questions for you. We are going to, so, but we won't debate it or nothing like that, because we're going further on into the meeting where we're going to get into details. But if there's any questions that we have, we'll be asking when you're ready.
Thank you. Thanks for
So
that.
please go ahead.
Yes. I don't think it's not required in the thing.
Well,
Yeah.
it probably is.
This one, yeah.
Okay, well, there, it does, yeah. So, Mr. Mayor, members of council, good morning, and, yes, John Hackett, Sierra Planning, and my colleague, Phil Planning of Perkins and Will. So we've done this very much as a partnership, so you would have seen both of us at the meeting on a much different occasion. I think there was a lot of snow the last time we were here for the public meeting in January. But we have concluded the study. It is in draft, so you know the way these things proceed. If you've waded through it, you'll have noticed there was no executive summary in the document, and we do that to give you a little bit of indigestion in that we want everyone to read the report in some detail. So when this gets finalized, the presentation that you're going to get from us today essentially becomes that executive summary, so it gives it a snapshot. But in all seriousness, what we want to do is make sure at a draft stage, everyone needs to read the report and to come back to us or internally with any questions that you have, and then it's finalized. So with that, what I'll do, there is a presentation which I'm going to assume is on everyone's screen. Okay, so maybe we could just dive into it. So firstly, my thanks to township staff for facilitating the process early on. We needed to get going very quickly with consultation, and we did so it was good. The results have been quite a clockwork procedural development of this plan. We're going to go through, as I said, the project overview. I'll speak, and then my colleague will speak on this as well. So we'll give an overview, consultation at a glance, and then we've broken it down into two pieces. The first is part A, which is really just to sort of try and bring forward, I think, a lot of the concerns that were brought up, which is, you know, what to do with this site. Anytime you have a major capital decision on a facility, you kind of have to go back to basics and asking, is this a good use of public money? So we've done that for the arena, but we've done it for the site as a whole. In terms of reference, which I thought were excellent, we're very much geared to, you know, this is an opportunity to, without it being a recreation master plan, what can we do to look at the site holistically? So you put everything in its proper context. And so that's really what we've done in part A. And then part B is the investigative solutions, which we are focusing on the arena for that. We recognize, you'll see in the report, and just as a side note, the report, if you have had a chance to go through it, a lot of it is to be used, I think, later on, and that we've gone through, we've asked some serious questions about what is the developability of that site for indoor and outdoor uses. And so, you know, the information which is there about the very difficult policy environment to develop further into the forested lands, to go over to the on the western boundary where there is creek lands, the actual development boundary itself is very much prized real estate, and how you develop that for a range of new or other uses or reinvestment in existing uses, that's going to be something which you can't answer today. You can only answer it if and when council made a decision to say, for example, we're going to do more or different kinds of outdoor uses, but the information is all in the report. So it's very much a compendium, almost a manual of things that you can go to afterward. So to separate out the arena from the broader site, I think is going to be important. So project scope in that sense, we've gone through the timeline. The project website was important and it got a lot of responses. Online survey, 284 responses. That's good. It's not the best in the world. Sometimes you get hundreds and hundreds. Sometimes you get very few. This is a good number. It's certainly representative, which is our goal. And we got some very good responses from it. And representation of the public meeting was good for us. To just go then into part A, if you go to the next slide. If you just go beyond that to the next one, and then beyond that. Let's just start with, so a lot of this project sort of come back, it was always on the books, so the recommendations from the master plan remain really relevant. So despite the problems that the arena had, that you had to do the emergency fix on it in terms of facilities, the idea of studying this in terms of the future of the arena has been laid out for some time, as council knows. Obviously, the pandemic got in the way of serious efforts. There was some internal effort or community effort to sort of look at things, I think around 2019, 2020 in terms of the future, but it's the rec master plan that is the proposition that needs to be fulfilled. So that said, undertake a detailed feasibility for a new replacement, single ice pad at existing Holloman Memorial Arena. And it said so because of the analysis that we had done, which restated the significance of the arena. So it looked at data, it looked at all of the things that we do in recreation master planning and concluded that this is an investment proposition, not a disinvestment proposition. So that's 2018. And so we go forward from there. So if you go to the next slide. So that's the rec master plan. If you just go forward one more. So in terms of some of the metrics that we wanted to identify, the first is always how well used is the facility, and we look at prime time utilization. So prime time is that period of time during the season that is after the schools get out, extending to the evening. It's usually something like 11 p.m. It varies according to community, and then weekends as well. Those represent, that's roughly about 65 hours a week. Actually calculated out. The reason we don't look at non-prime is that unless you're in a community where non-prime time is going to be heavily used, if you're in a bigger city, non-prime time will be used, because if you take Toronto as a good example, you've got one ice surface per 50,000 people. So there's a different dynamic. If we were in a resource community that was involved in a lot of shift work, for example, so you've got people working through the night, etc., everything gets scrambled, and non-prime time, as we would talk about it, which is during the school day, that actually gets used a lot. But in the context of Alec Holloman, the focus is on prime time. So looking at 2016, which is from the previous plan, and then rolling forward to post-pandemic, you can see that ice utilization has been high in prime time. 81 to, let's call it 80%, just to sort of give you a rough average over that sort of almost 10-year period. What that really says is that it's working well. It's not under great stress in terms of providing ice time, although people will tell you there isn't enough ice time. The reality is that at 80%, you have a little bit of room for growth, but not much. If you remove the ice from the system, remember you're dealing with a regional system of ice. So then you would start to put the cat amongst the pigeons if you actually lost the arena in terms of its use. So that is sort of the reality of it. If you look at other facilities close by, whether it be Coburg, Colburn, Port Hope, Trent Hills, and others, in their prime time, there's a consistency there. So this is how you want facilities to operate going forward. In terms of the breakdown of usage, we've identified that, you know, there are a range of users. And I can, and then maybe in questions, we can address the issue of what's happening to ice sports generally in terms of trends, but we won't get into that detail just now. Next slide, if you could.
Can I ask you one before you move there? That utilization, is that based on, the prime time or non-prime time or both?
The utilization is based on prime time. Yeah.
And that's just why Randy and Baltimore and this.
Yes, that's a good time to ask.
Through you, Mayor Lobo.
Well, it's very difficult to get information firstly, so we had to get an outreach to communities to find out not only what their utilization is, but then debate the issues of what's prime time and so forth. So if there's one that's missed on here, like Baltimore as an
There
example.
were two.
Two,
It was Cranny and Baltimore.
yeah, they wouldn't change the conclusions here, but we'd be happy to go and find that information if it's of help. But as you can see here, you know,
Oh, sorry. I retract the Colburn and just leave the Baltimore there. Sorry.
so Baltimore, we can go back and look to obtain that information. Yeah, we'll do that.
Very happy.
This might not be the time, but you did open the door and specifically ask, are we focused on the prime time hours only? So I'm looking back to the numbers that council was provided last year for November and for December. And in those numbers, if you want, they only show 55% for, which month is that? November, and then 56% for December. So that doesn't seem to align with what we have here in front of us. And even when I'm looking at the circle graph there where it says AH programs account for 24% of our prime time hours, but in fact, only 4 hours per week are, or it may be 5 hours. Anyway, it doesn't account for 25% of the hours.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think we need to get through the presentation. I think none of those observations affect the conclusions of what we're doing. That's kind of the bottom line. We would be more than happy to go back and take that information and look at the information we have. But as I'm sure you recognize, we report the information that is evidentiary from the bookings that we have. But we'll try and close the loop on those issues, but I'll leave it at that because I think the numbers speak for themselves, but to the extent there's any discrepancy, I think we need to make sure that everyone's given an answer on that.
Perhaps that's why the executive summary isn't finished yet.
But okay, so in terms of summer use, we can go to the next one. So this one, and I think it's as I looked at it, and this was something I perhaps should have identified, but I think there's a mix of outdoor and indoor figures in here. So the summation to 100% isn't really a useful metric, but what it does show you is that the Grafton Minor Ball, which would be, you know, there are a number of different things in here. We would suggest that this is just a way of looking at the use of the facility, the complex as a whole. So it's the value from that perspective. Clearly, when we had consultation, it was made very evident to us that we're not just talking about ice. We're talking about a facility within a context of a park. You've obviously done some work in terms of getting trails development and so forth in there. So we should try and steer the conversation to a broader discussion as well, I think, if we can. Next slide, which is on, actually just go back one if you wouldn't mind. Thank you. To the operational performance. Thank you. Yeah, that's good. So this is always important because I think most people in the community certainly understand it, that in the context of, you know, Ontario arenas, you're in a deficit proposition for operating arenas. And it's the balance between user fees and what the tax base should support. So we carved up the numbers and we were very diligent to make sure that we did that, because sometimes the numbers get reported for the park as a whole, sometimes for all parks in the municipality as a whole. And what we really wanted to say is, and all those numbers are actually laid out in the report, but for the purposes of the presentation here, we want to focus only on the arena, because there was a clear indication, at least to myself, that there's a question about the merit of the deficit. So our goal here is simply not to get political and say whether you should or should not, but are you consistent with other municipalities in terms of the operating deficit? And the answer here, as you can see, that you absolutely are. If you're around 200,000 for a facility in annual deficit, you're at sort of the midpoint that you would expect for operating a facility where you're trying to make sure that minor sports gets a good rate. There's always questions about whether the adults or whether those who come in and book camps or have any kind of elite hockey development should be paying more. But in terms of these numbers, it demonstrates, again, consistency with others. Next slide. Just to move forward then, we're talking about growth and, you know, the health of the community in a demographic sense going forward. And I think this is an important graphic for you to see. You may have been aware of it before, but you can see there you've got call a top-heavy profile, which is that as all communities are aging, this one is demonstrating the reality that you see with the larger cohorts being in the older age groups. Not dramatic, but enough to suggest that, and I would put to you that the investment in recreation of all kinds, and quality of life, as well as just opening up lands for development, for people to come in and buy housing that's affordable, that what you want to be able to try and move somewhat toward what you see for the province as a whole. You're not going to get there, and nor should you. The province has some very big cities in it where you have an influx of people and are continuing to create a more youthful median age. But it does mean that I think what this tells us is that while you have growth, you need to support that growth with things that keep people coming and staying to the community. Next slide. So on that, as it relates to population, we can see a degree of growth, and obviously the growth is anticipated over a period to 2051. So a long way out. You know, some of you may be retired by 2051. But to give you an indication, there is growth. It's coming. We know it's coming. It's coming from the GTA. How you accommodate that growth is going to be the challenge, and it's obviously a big challenge. But what it means is that it's important to ready yourself as a community for that across all of the services that you have to provide. And to the extent the arena or the Parks and Rec equation throughout the municipality is relevant to that, this tells us that, you know, there needs to be considerations about what to provide in that regard. Okay, so with that, that really concludes the sort of the part A, which if you have the decisions, you know, should you idle, meaning is this a do nothing proposition? You'll see our recommendations say that you do need to do something. You don't have to do everything. You have to do something to make some change that I think is within a reasonable reach. But you know, investment is asset management, call it what you will. That's the focus coming out of part A. So with part B, we looked at a range of investigative solutions. And what I'll do is I'll hand over to Phil and he'll just run through some of the options specific to the arena.
Thank you, John. By just a little bit of background, I'm an architect and I do a lot of recreation facilities, so I'm going to bring that perspective to it. We did visit your facility with Jeremy and team. Certainly don't know it as well as you do, but this first, go next slide, please. This one more, yeah. This little diagram here with these bubbles is just a high-level observations of what John and I observed that needs help, needs attention. And I'm not going to read them all out because you're very familiar with them, but the general themes are the level of accessibility, the level of need that needs to be paid to the exterior skin, the mechanical systems. This is putting aside the refrigeration system, but mechanical systems. The size and the of the change rooms themselves, the way they get used in today's sport market. Visibility, signage, all of the other things that go to keep a facility current and what people expect a need to be done. And this is all kind of low hanging fruit. These things can all be done, and this is kind of basically a menu of the items. Go to the next slide. So John and I took a look at those and we tried to give you some high level numbers. And the way we did that is that we are current in the construction industry. So we know based on what is out to tender, what is on the books, what has been given cost estimates by quantity surveyors of what the typical costs are for single pad arenas. So we looked at this in two levels. We looked at it, what would happen if we renovated the rink and the mechanical systems and the support spaces, the change rooms and the washrooms and the general circulation. Not the ice, but just the building, basically. You're looking at, in today's dollars, April dollars, you're looking at approximately 2.8 million plus 1 million, $3.9 million. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. Then if you look at the ice, and I think we talked about the ice when we visited it with Jeremy, there needs to be a new refrigeration system, a new rink slab. This is without expanding the rink. It's just existing. And that's based on current dollars for a 100-ton CO2 system, which includes the piping, the single pad concrete slab, comes to 2.6 billion. So if you did those together, the 3.9, the 2.6, you're at 6.5 million just to elevate the building to today's standards. And then John estimated soft costs, which and contingencies on top of that comes to $7.5 million.
If I could just, so we put contingencies on because, you know, this is essentially a pre-design exercise. It's an observation, it's looking at current costs in the marketplace. And so we like to put on, you know, a contingency of 20-25% to be able to reflect on the fact that we're not quite, you know, there's going to be potential change. The purpose of a contingency should be that as you go through the design process, the actual percentage contingency has to come down to the point where you have absolute certainty. Hopefully that means that you're not going up, but as you know, we're in an inflationary environment. So you have to, upon receipt of this report, if you were to move with, say, ice-only improvements, the first thing would be to get a clear sense of the budget that you could get it from. But whether that's going to contractors or through engineers, that would be up to you.
Go to the next slide. Right, so then we took a look at what could be done to make the building much more functional, much more usable, based a lot on the information that we got at the open house. And fundamentally, what we heard loud and clear is accessible, usable public meeting space and activity space. So we did a quick study of what would happen if we added onto the building, and this would be a 2-story addition. That would include a lobby, an office, info counter or a welcome counter, multi-purpose space, maybe an exterior deck that looks back at the playing field, a viewing, improve the viewing area, improve the upstairs viewing area as well, and then above this would be another meeting space. So adding on this block of space here would be a reasonable first step of updating the facility in terms of its program and in terms of its use. And then renovating the balance, the yellow L-shaped piece of plan there. That would be a phase 1, a moderate expansion. Then phase 2, slide. Without undoing what you've already done, it would be quite feasible to add another components around there so that lobby would become an expanded lobby 2, a gym, a new administration. 3 would be a fitness room, 4 would be a library if needed, and municipal offices 4 and 5. And then 9 and 8 are support areas. And at the same time, it would be prudent to bring new change rooms on board, or demolish the existing, which are simply added to the main arena, and add this as a new component, a new block. That would be a phase 2 expansion.
If I could just add as well, the location of that, based on maintaining the existing facility and then expanding and having a wraparound, would take you into the area where the septic bed is. So there is that to consider. My understanding is it's probably a fairly ancient septic bed. So it may be at end of life anyway, or close to, not really necessarily to hear that might be the case, I don't know. But we were made aware, and I have no more details than just to tell you that we were made aware that, you know, if there was a proposition to create some level of municipal services as a result of development in the village, then that obviously would make sense to extend those to the extent that you can to tie into the either an existing or a new facility in the park, because it would give you a tremendous opportunity to use your land better. As at the present, where that expansion is, it sits atop the septic.
Finally, if you go to option 3, this would imagine building new, and this a site plan diagram would say you could keep the existing building operating, build an entirely new facility, and this includes taking the same components that you would have imagined in option 2 of the gym and fitness center along with it to make it could get the economy of scale. The building would sit approximately where the first 2 diamonds are, but you'd be able to keep the existing diamonds to the north. And then you'd reconfigure the parking, make a better plaza for the cenotaph, and then in the future, once you could repurpose the arena or remove it, the old arena, and then you would master plan the entire site. This would be kind of option 3 would be building new.
And if I could just add to that, so, you know, we've had to locate the new arena on the assumption of maintaining the existing arena, so we don't lose the use, because it's well, at least a sort of 30-month construction schedule to build.
Yeah, it's in 24 months.
We're trying to align it with seasons. Yeah. So that building that you see on that diagram is an arena, which is the modern arena. So it's going to be more space expansive than the original. Plus, there's a double gymnasium tacked onto it. Okay, so whether you do that or do less, these are all decisions later on. In terms of what you do on the rest of the site, you have room to put a third diamond back if you would. We haven't shown it, but you could remove the existing arena, obviously, and then reinvest on that site. So there are things that you can move around. And what we're trying to do on all these site fits is to show you there's lots of different combinations with it. These are, I think, pieces of intelligence that you can bring to bear on any decisions that you would have in the future about how you balance all these pressures for the use of the site.
Okay. Yep. Next slide, which small text but big numbers, unfortunately. Your total building cost for option 3 would be $31 million, and that breaks down into you can see the breakdown there in terms of the arena, and then the gym, the multi-purpose room, and the library. You could certainly pick and choose of those, but in the neighborhood of 31 million hard.
Where's the indoor pool?
I didn't ask for an indoor pool. That's another big number. But those were the components that would, and we've seen the very similar numbers with other communities that are exploring the same thing. And then site development, then total site works, total hard construction costs would be about $35 million. And then John estimated what the municipality would need on top of that for soft costs. That includes furniture, fixtures and equipment, design fees, permits, management, legal fees, etc., bringing you to about 42 million. But then you have to add the contingencies onto that, let's say 51 million. Yes. Yeah. In today's dollars.
It's me then.
Yeah, you can go from there.
Thanks. So, yeah, they are big numbers. So what we tried to give is an indication of the minimum that's required, and then there's sort of the maximum if you do it in today's dollars. And when we get back into the specifics of the recommendations, because despite large numbers, I don't want it to be construed as our recommendation is to lower your gaze, to be less ambitious. It's quite the opposite, but it's very much geared to what a municipal council can realistically look to in terms of decision-making over a reasonable period of time. But I'll get into those specifics. But just to deal with the next slide on comparing costs. What we've got, this is an important table, because on the right-hand side, you have that 51 million, and we're including contingencies in this. But, you know, I'm not going to say it's 40 million, it could be 50, it depends, it's entirely, that's the point of contingencies. Use the bigger number, because that's what people, I think, need to gird themselves for. So, and that's with the gymnasium and there's other uses, but let's just say that is the program that you wanted to develop, so that you have a balance of not just ice, but you have full 12-month a year usability of a rec center, $50 million. On a per square foot basis, that's around about $750 a square foot. Now, if you were in a situation where you could achieve that project, then that is, you know, you get the project in one phase. You're not going to do this in different phases. On the left-hand side, if you went through a process of renewal, we've simply taken each of the options, which is the option one, which was ice-only improvements, followed by, you know, with contingencies, and then the other warranted renovations to the existing building, and then moving forward to the expansion of the existing building at the front, and then moving into that more larger expansion, which was this sort of more progressive part of option two. You end up with a total around 30 million for that, plus the renovation gets you around 38 million. And on a per square foot cost, which again, you can see this measure as helpful or not, but I think it's helpful in that you've got a renovated, a reimagined building, but it's still the old building in terms of some of the limitations of space. And that's important. Space is not going to be as big as a new facility. In per square foot terms, you're not that far off. Okay, now the other thing, so $618 versus $754. The likelihood of going right through from initial, improvement of the existing ice plant and slab right through to a full expansion in phase two, the likelihood of doing that, I think, over the same period of time as finding a solution to build a new facility, my experience would say that you were more likely to get a new building than to be able to complete each and every phase of this or the expansion, because it is difficult to achieve funding over multiple asks when you are looking to government to provide that funding. It's not impossible. And there may be that you get to a point where you're relatively satisfied with the expansion that you have. So this isn't about us making choices for you and saying you must go with this, but I think if I can just turn to the final part of the slide, which is the recommendations. What we're really, just to sort of bring it right back up, we have concluded that the arena is an important part of the site. The idea of decommissioning ice to then put in a transient use, which would be something like indoor soccer or some other kind of use. Our experience again shows those uses don't stand the test of time. And at some point, questions are still remarked about keeping the building alive because of this scale. And that is an arena building, so it's a large space, but there is a certain limitation to its usability. Unless you invest money to put heat in there, for example. Otherwise, it becomes a cold building in winter that you need to keep going. So lots of people will have opinions on this, but our opinion as people who work in this field is that don't go for decommissioning on the assumption that you can find an alternative use and the building is going to have a sustained life. The one thing we want to avoid is a dead building in a good park. That's kind of the essential message here. So we feel that the right solution is based on the importance of the arena as it stands. And again, hopefully we've made it clear, we are not here to advocate for ice. We are advocating for recreation as a whole. That what we want to be able to do is suggest to you that an achievable thing, a baseline, if you will, is to invest in the remediation of the things in the arena that are required. Look for the capital funds to be able to do that. And then the choice is really open to you. And I've no doubt that would go to the next cycle of council, but it's to start that process of looking at a new facility. Because a new facility, the ones that we've been involved in a range of communities, they often take gestation period from concept to commissioning and opening the doors, could be measured in a decade. We see that if you go to Eastern Ontario, Russell Township is opening a new 3-pad, different community, bigger community outside Ottawa. We started that conversation in 2014. They're in design now and they will be opening it. And I can tell you the same story of different places around the country. So there is nothing lost and everything gained from keeping an aspiration of investing in a new facility, while at the same time ensuring that facility could be maintained for another 10 years. And then separately, as I mentioned, the outdoor uses, the role of this site, I think the township needs to be commended on the work that you have done, putting in the fitness trail. So we're showing a loop. We want to continue that. The cenotaph, I hope everyone can take away from our report that we've taken it very seriously to improve the operation of that space when it's used on November the 11th every year. So people are off the road and on the site, but and have greater capacity to accommodate those remembrances. But that's it in a nutshell. I think we want to give you the ability to take this report and action it, as opposed to us come back and say, find $50 million. But I think there's a conversation to socialize the project going forward in terms of what the aspiration of the community. And I'll just leave it at this. When we spoke with the Recreation Committee, there was a sense that we got coming out of it that if the hard decision had to be what you ultimately do, it was to start that conversation about, can you see a path forward to get a new facility, which of course would be more than just ice. It would be a recreation center. So I'll leave it at that. And I thank you for your patience in listening. And
Anybody have any further
questions?
Councilor Booth.
Through you, your worship, to maybe it's better for Philip or Jonathan. Going to your page option 1, the cost, just a clarification. So you've got down there, the size of the rink wouldn't be altered. So it would be staying at 170 by 70, right? They're not changing. And the other question would be, it talks about the renovated support spaces, which is roughly $1 million. Is included in that the boards and glass? Yes. Okay, thank you. Yeah. And that's included in the 2.8. Stated good repair shell boards and systems. That's the 2.8. The 1 million is for basically that yellow, the change rooms and the front part. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, if I could just add through your worship, on the question of expansion of the ice, and we were aware that is, you see it in the survey results, but the reality is we had to make a decision whether we thought that was a value for money proposition. And you don't really have much width, given the structure. So you'd be losing out in terms of some of the abilities to create accessibility and circulation. And yes, you could go out of the back. Question is, is that really a value for money? There are examples. One we came across was in Brock Township in northern Durham region, where they did do that. Whether the circumstances are the same, but our recommendation at this point is, if you're going to go with expansion of the ice with everything else, maybe you're moving away from where the focus needs to be.
No, and that makes sense, thank you. I just wanted to make sure the boards and glass were there, because if you're gonna do the floor and everything, then those boards and glass are way outdated. Okay, thank you.
Your government, you comment?
I do. Thank you for the presentation. I took a couple of things that really jumped out at me. Is this demographics? That's something I've thought a lot about. How do we attract families here? We have 3 schools in this municipality, and yet the new people moving in tend to be new retirees. So that really jumped out at me. And then your new building having a better chance of carrying through to completion. But I circle back the new building to my first comment. We already see many, many families within our municipality who are traveling into Cobourg because it has a better rink system than out here. We've watched in the last 20 years the decline of minor hockey here, and I believe we in the 23-24 season only had 4 teams. So we already know families are traveling to these newer rinks, which I agree. I think new is more likely to be completed and better serve us in our 30-year window that we're looking forward on.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Through you, Mayor Logal. Thank you for your presentation, gentlemen. And one of the first things before we even got started here was your title investor idle. And we have been idling. And so now we're at the nail biting stage of how far do we go? I was able to get a big copy of this, so I spent a lot of time dissecting all your information. It was quite helpful. You came at it from different angles. And could you just clarify the price of, I guess it's option 1, without adjusting the ice surface? Are we coming in at 7.5 million? Or am I overshooting that?
No, I mean, the numbers are, as you read them on the
That's
page. Firstly, let me just say, I hope it's not taken in pejoratively when we had the investor idle. It's not meant to suggest that you could have been more active. I think you've been doing all the policy work that you need to.
It wasn't taken that, but
Yeah.
I think we are at a stage where we have to do something, and here we are.
Yeah, it is, we're in the business of giving you a little bit of shock in that, we don't want those newspaper reports to sort of say it's this amount, and then a month later it creeps up.
Mhm.
We want to do the opposite, if anything. So, I think, what we've tried to do is break it down to is if you're going to try and get government money and you see certain windows, you'll have to take advice on what is most achievable, maybe from the government itself. But ice only there would be, as we say, it's just making sure that you can choose sites. To the councillor's point, you probably want to do as much as you can. Certainly you want to have that glass higher and the boards better. And then beyond that is what you can squeeze into a reasonable build so you're not having to do other things. Phil's indication maybe on the slide prior to that, which is you just go around and talk about all the problems with the building. You could end up spending 7.5 million. Yeah. And I would, if I were writing an application for you for funding, I would, subject to, obviously, if it's a 50-50 split, that's obviously something to consider, but try and go for the higher amount that you can within that fixed up option, if you can. But it's a balance. I appreciate that.
If I may,
Yes.
as well. The funding used to be a third. And that is with shovel-ready projects. Is it too soon in this particular package here to maybe project what our next step should be, or is the funding there still there? I know the provincial government is really pushing a lot of recreation, trying to keep us healthier as we age. And I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that process.
Thank you. Through your worship, to the deputy mayor, there is a sort of an ongoing federal transfer of funds for community infrastructure, which is not just recreation, but other things which are transferred to the provinces. There are these agreements with each province. Ontario has access, and I forget the exact number, but it's from that amount that has been rolling out these programs of support. You know, you heard about the 200 million that was going to be used sometime last year, and there is sort of a more of an open-ended application process that's possible at present. I think you've got to be cautious about how much you can really get from these programs. I mean, we are in an environment where you do have a new federal government, so we're going to have to see the extent to which investment is going to start to target these things. And I have no intel on what that's going to be, but in terms of shovel readiness, if there was one thing I would say that you can do is if you were to take the report for information as it relates to the broader range of options that we've provided, but action on option one to some degree, whether that's a couple of other steps to get a little bit more information from an engineer. Once you're at that stage, Phil, I think it's fair to say you would meet the definition of shovel ready and that you could mobilize quickly. Yeah.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. Thank you, gentlemen. You really give us a good view, and you give us a realistic view of what our municipality can afford, and you also give us a bit of a dream. But the importance of this arena to me and to the people that that come to me and talk to me, this arena is very important. And I agree with you 100%, no matter what happens in the future, this arena has to be fixed and up and running. So I really appreciate those comments in your report, because that's realistic for our township and makes total sense. And you know, when you look at the numbers that you put in there, like we're par with everybody else on the hours of rental. They're increasing all the time by the looks, and so is cost. But at the same time, you know, the parts where hockey and skating is coming back at a pretty good pace in all of Ontario, represents the fact of what that arena means to our municipality. People are coming in, or people want to stay here. So I thank you for all that report. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councilor Booth.
Through your worship, sorry, I did miss one of my last questions, more for you, Philip. In the cost of a new development, which is roughly 51 million or whatever, I noticed that I marked down the demolition, you had nothing. So what would be the approximate cost if they did build it? And then obviously, I guess the demolition would be the old arena. And I have no idea, is that 500,000, $1 million? What would it take to demolish the old one then? Through you, Mr. Mayor, you're right, we didn't put demo cost in here, but it's not going to be the most significant cost. I'm going to say you're probably right, 500 million to get through the existing building, assuming that there are no contaminations in the soil or something like that. Oh, I'd assume there probably is after 70 years, but okay, so we're roughly, you know, anywhere from 500,000 to another $1 million. Okay, thank you.
Or it's a future project. I mean, we see this all the time, right? So if you did get the community buy-in and the funding model and all those tricky things to a point where you were investing, often that question of what you do with the existing facility, where there is a lot of emotion attached to it, can get in the way of effective decisions. So sometimes it's just punted down the road. So yeah, Phil's not wrong. It's a demolition cost, which is always eye-watering because you just can't envisage that. But you know, you have some choices going forward.
Okay, thank you.
Joe, thank you very much for your report, both your reports, and it was really, I'm glad we got the detailed one first, because it generated a lot of thoughts, and then we came back to the summary, and it kind of made a lot more sense, so I appreciate you sending it that way. Certainly an awful lot for pairing this, and it's going to be an awful good discussion among the council to see where we go from here.
And thank you. We're very happy to answer any questions on those matters of Data we'll get right on to just to ensure that we've communicated it correctly.
Yeah, I think that's important because there's a lot of people that want to see that type of stuff, right? It's important to see everybody has the same information.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Jonathan. Is it Jonathan or John?
Doesn't matter.
Just don't come to me, right? Just don't come to me. Want to take a 10-minute break? Before we do that, though, we'd like to receive the report from Jonathan, and that, so I'll read the resolution that the committee of the whole received the Haldeman Memorial Arena Needs Assessment by Sierra Planning and Management for information. I can move the seconder, moved by Deputy Mayor Stover, seconded by Councilor Ainsworth. All in favor? That's carried, and we will take a motion to take a 10-minute break and be back at 11:30.
Thank you.
Can I get a mover? Moved by Deputy Mayor Stover, seconded by Councilor Ainsworth. All in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Okay, we're going on to committee reports. And I have a motion to receive committee reports. But the agenda items 6.2 to 6.5 on the May 20th, 2025 committee of the whole meeting agenda be received for information. Can I get a mover in a second? Moved by Councilor Ainsworth. Discussion on any of those?
Seeing none, all in favor? That motion is carried. Next, we have development service reports. And the first one we're dealing with is policies, security for development agreements. And is Tracy going to give us a little bit of information on that, Tracy, please? Good morning. How are you?
So, in late fall of 2024, the province introduced a new regulation under the Planning Act for surety bond, basically instructing municipalities to accept surety bond where the applicant has requested it as part of the development. So the proposed policy will clearly lay out the types of securities that the municipality can accept. Typically, with developments, we've seen the security as a matter of credit. Cash token, and this is the new requirement for the proposed policy like that. It's a form of security and what types of projects we would expect to surety on. So basically, we have to be fine with the Planning Act. Like in instances where the municipality may approve the extension of a road and a private property owner with the extension through an agreement, they would not be able to use a surety bond because that is Planning application that's more of an asset, and it would then be typical letter of credit for that. So if there are any specific questions on the report or the policy, I can talk about that.
I have a question. Did we originally have a policy and now we're adding the surety bond?
I hadn't found a policy, so I did some research on what other municipalities had and compared those policies and put together this policy based on best practices and had that reviewed by our legal team at Templeman's. We have a request coming to amend an agreement for a subdivision at the next meeting, where we'll be putting a bylaw forward for replacement of the sections of the agreement that speak to letter of credit because they would like to use a surety bond. So this just helps to clarify what the stance of the municipality is in terms of securities. It kind of formalizes how we had already been dealing with securities. Right now, there's a template of a letter of credit in our subdivision template document. I think it's more appropriate to have that referenced in a policy. That way, because there's different forms of security, the actual agreement will then reference the security the developer intends to use rather than including a template document that's not relevant.
I've answered about 6 questions I had there.
Sorry.
Thank you very much. And I'm happy to see something like this that we can pass on to anybody that potentially wants to get security of some type of. So thank you. Mary Catherine, go ahead.
Just a couple of comments. So I was talking with our planner a little bit, and I noted that when we looked at that housing solutions workforce, there was one table that had brought up this issue of how to get their funding so that they actually have access to their money. So the surety bonds, as you explained, is a mechanism that they can now have better access to their own funds. So that is very good. And the last thing, this has no impact on the amount that's being required, because I know we did have one application where they were seeking relief for the amount required, but this has no impact on the other, correct?
Correct. So when an applicant needs to post securities, the amount is based on the estimate of the works. Typically, we ask for 100% for a major development. I believe in some of the road extensions, it may have been 50%. So council would assess the percentage through the agreement process, and then each form of security would match what was required.
Go ahead, Mike.
Through you, Mary. I guess my only concern is that all the other municipalities in the county are doing the same thing and we're comparable with them. So, so that say developers aren't jumping from one to the other because of red tape or cost because of our municipality or policies. So I would just caution that we work together with other municipalities to have a common denominator of how it's all done.
Chrissy, you have a comment?
Through the chair, I did reach out to the other municipalities to see if they had developed a policy. I did get information from Trent Hills. I think it's really the Planning Act that's directing how and what we can take in terms of securities. So it's not really adding red tape. It's just clarifying what the processes are, I believe.
Actually, could make it easier for them too, couldn't it?
I would expect having clear documentation as to, how to properly lay out the documents would be helpful. Coming from a different municipality, we had a similar template for a letter of credit. Now with the introduction of the surety bond, it just helps to clarify, what institutions and the requirements for those institutions are acceptable, and they are reiterated in the regulations. So we're not adding to what we're allowed to ask for, we're just clarifying what we're allowed to ask for.
Thank you. Okay, anybody have more questions? I'll read the recommended resolution. That the committee of the whole recommend to council that the security for development agreement policy be approved. Can I get a mover in a second? Moved by Councillor O'Neill, second by Councillor Booth. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? That motion carried. We're gonna move on to, protective services. And we have a report regarding bylaw department, for review. And the CAO is going to address this. And this is bylaw number 2025-17. Dave?
Thank you, Mayor Vogel. Through you to the rest of the council, this report and bylaw was put together with the review of 12 different municipalities. Our bylaw team did this. Our legal team has reviewed it. And it comes before you with what is considered to be the best acceptable practices that exist throughout our area and a little bit beyond. There are a couple items that have come to light through our complaint mechanisms addressing the training of a couple of local police departments, and I would expect that will come up as part of council's discussion. Certainly, the ability to find alternatives or to try to work our way through that is something that staff could do for council.
Thank you. I'll open it up to the floor for anybody have any questions or comments. Councillor Ainsworth.
Through you, Mayor. I guess comments and questions, I guess, but so when I read through all this and I talk to some of the individuals that have more knowledge about what's going on, and nothing more than I do, a lot of this stuff, or most of it, is already covered under the act. And so I'm wondering if it just adding constraints to our hunters and sportsmen shooters in our township. You know, so under general, if the property exceeds 50 acres, if you discharge in the purpose of hunting. I mean, I don't know how many people would, pardon me? So the other thing too, it just kind of goes on and on. I mean, the purpose, I think, what started this is the Tucker Road issue, that we have the Portal police and we have the corporate police out there retraining, doing target shooting, and to the point where it's happened about 12 times in the last few months. And it's going on for 4 to 6 hours a day. So can we address that problem and not put this here? I would just soon receive this as information and maybe go back to the root of the cause why this was here, and that's with the other issues that we don't know about. But I hadn't heard anything since I've been on council or even before that we had problems with people with guns in our township. So me personally, I've just seen this, receive for information, and then deal with the training aspect of the two police stations, what's going on Tucker Road. Find them another place to go and do it away from residents, or maybe ask them to go to the hunting and the gun club in Coburg, or maybe a shooting range. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Booth, you're ready to, looks like you're ready to put your hand up. Go ahead.
No, I saw that Dave had his hand up.
Just to address Councilor Ainsworth, so there was a little bit of a question in there, and that is, have we had an issue before? And yes, if you would remember, in 2024, we had some significant issues surrounding Whispering Springs with the discharge of firearms. And it is very customary for municipalities to have and to allow for a gun club. I am accustomed to understanding that operates 1 day per week during a certain given hours, as an example. So there are variations of solutions that we could look at. We have had some difficulties in bylaw in the last couple of years where we do not have a bylaw document adopted by council that can allow us to go and enforce the discharge of firearms that is not police training, but even if it's just for pleasure, and it sounds like that you've walked into a barrage of arsenal, and that's not appropriate for our residents either. So the document comes before you in trying to be something that is appropriate for all residents concerned and allows the bylaw department some teeth to enact on.
Thank you. Councilor Booth.
Through your worship, I agree with Councillor Ainsworth. I read this over and was trying to think of how it would help the 9 homeowners on Tucker Road. And out of those 9, 5 of them have been complaining about the Coburg Police and the Port Hope Police doing their training there. And just last year, and as an example, there was 22 days that they complained about where they were firing off weapons for approximately 4 to 6 hours. And some of the residents have sent me recordings of this, and I've sent it on to Bylaw and to Dave to try and come to a solution. And if you do a little bit of research, you'll find out that not only are they just doing recertification, I'm guessing, on their sidearms, but they're also, I believe, testing military-style C8 assault rifles there, which are very loud. So the problem that I have with this bylaw here is number 5, the exemptions would exempt the police officers under the training word, which means that they could do their training. The performance of their duty, that's law in Canada, that an officer can use their revolver or whatever they have in doing their duty, which I have no problem with. But the bit about the training, we have to come to some solution for these people that, you know, in this day and age, I think they've been there over 20 years, probably in this pit practicing. And I think with people being close there and everything, and the complaints we're getting is we need to talk to them to say, either they have to come up with a schedule that they're not doing it 20, 30 times in a summertime. Maybe they can do it 1 or 2 dates, or as Councillor Ainsworth said, there's lots of gun clubs and rifle ranges and stuff like that that they can do it. For example, the OPP, I believe, go up to Elmer, and I think some of them even go to Trenton. I believe there's a military base there that they can do. So I'm not in favor of touching the gun.
I think we're getting a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of touching the gun bylaw either, because it sounds like we're overreacting and we're gonna, you know, talk about how everybody else uses the gun bylaw and everything. In my 8 years as a councillor, I've never had anybody come to me to complain about neighbors firing the gun other than Tucker Road, which is a different issue. Thank you.
And the only reason I'm trying to interrupt you is because we're supposed to be asking questions of our CAO, and then we'll get into debate. I think you were kind of debating a little bit. Deputy Mayor.
To you, Mayor Lobo, to our CAO. Dave, it's interesting when I read this, that it has hindered the our bylaw officers because we haven't had a bylaw in place. And so there's 2 different things going on here. So I don't see that this is going to hinder anybody to have this bylaw in place. Number 2, and I'll maybe just touch on it, but won't dwell into it too much, is that there needs to be an organized timing of this. So people know when this is going to happen from those organizations. So that would be my only comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Catherine.
This is a very regulated area by both the province and the federal, and there's lots and lots of legislation. So my question is around how does this differ or expand upon what's already covered in the legislation, and how would it help us or help the bylaw department with enforcement if it's already something that's primarily regulated by other levels of government? And even with that, you did mention the target shooting that was happening by Whispering Springs. I don't see how this, but you can tell me how it might help bylaw in that case.
So the reason why it was brought forward for research, and the reason it was sent to our legal team, was to make sure that it had merit and it was something that was in the best interest of the township. Again, the township does not have them. So with respect to what happened at Whispering Springs, it would allow us to then regulate that that only it would be a certain route, example, police that could do training, that in fact it was regulated under what would be considered to be appropriate hunting practices and or discharge of firearms based on the size of the property that's in there. As I had expressed, with Councillor Booth, if this council has a will to limit, the police service from training and or limit it to certain areas, that is something that staff could absolutely look at. Again, this was something that we've researched and are bringing forward to this council if they want to have a firearms flag.
Thank you, Dave. I'm gonna throw my thoughts on it too. I tend to, I think it's important that you do have something so that you can take it to, bylaw and take it to the person. It's no different than, it is a little bit different when you're specifying such things like, trying to address the times and everything else, because I doubt if the province has times that you win and, or the county, or you okay? Yeah. Or the province or the feds can regulate time because they wouldn't do that. So I think that's important. And it isn't, and it's not very, I do have a little bit of concern on having training, opening it up for training more so than for everybody else. I think that if we're going to stick with the bylaws it is, we should take out the training portion. But I think it, in my opinion, and here for what CAO has offered and possibilities, I think we should be going to Cobourg and Port Hope and seeing how, making sure that they're aware of the issues that we have and see if they can't come up with some way of addressing them. I'm going to leave this to you. Go ahead, Mike.
Through you, Mayor. So I guess, you know, I would ask that the CAO go back and maybe rethink this whole process out and look at the training part of it, maybe as an option to fix that part, obviously. But also to, I mean, like the regulations clearly cover all this stuff. And literally this kind of action, maybe a bylaw for, you know, someone's out in their backyard every Saturday and Sunday skeet shooting, you know, we have noise bylaws also. It becomes to the point where it could be addressed under that. But, you know, this regulation is literally, you know, I think it's redundant because we have so many regulations covering all this stuff. Where people can shoot, how they can shoot, when they can shoot. I mean, you look at, you know, guns, we are, I think legally, we can only shoot with a .270 caliber gun in Ontario. Anything above that is illegal. You know, even when you talk about shotguns, I mean, shotguns are good for maybe, even with the new shells nowadays, they're good for about maybe 100 yards, 120 yards. Depending on the shot. So like a number 6, 7, or 8, they're only good for like 60 yards. So some of that stuff would be okay, but you know, the distance in the caliber for the higher guns, it's so that's why it's all regulated by province. And I think we just need to stick to that and not open the can of worms on just trying to change or reinvent the wheel.
Okay. Go ahead.
I'd like, through you, your worship, I'd like to make a motion at this time that we accept this as information. This report as information.
Okay. And anything else with it, or just receive the information?
Just the report, and then I'd like to make another motion afterwards that in regard to the Tucker Road thing.
Okay. I need a seconder. Second by Councillor Ainsworth. All in favor? Motion is carried, and that is to receive report for information. Councillor Booth.
Through your worship, just what you said, Mr. Mayor, I agree with what you're saying. And maybe we can instruct staff to approach the Cobourg Police Department and the Port Hope Police Department with the concerns that we have from residents on Tucker Road, to try and come to some kind of agreement, you know, to find out how we can appease the people that are there, the 5 or 6 residents that are complaining, and whether it can be something where we can formalize a schedule or something, or maybe this day and age where it's time where they're going to have to look to go somewhere else. But at least if we can start that conversation with them. Because we're already up this year at 12 times already this time that they've already started, so they're probably gonna be another 20 or 25 different dates this year alone. It's probably too late to stop this year.
So I have is that a motion?
So I'll make a motion that staff approach the Coburg Police and the Port Hope Police Department to try and resolve this issue on Tucker Road. So how you wanna, the noise issue with the gun training.
Can I get a second for that motion? Seconded by Councilor Ainsworth. Any further discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, everyone. You'll get the information. Next report is the Parks, Recreation and Facilities Report, ICE allocation policy. ICE allocation policy PR 2025-09. Everybody have a chance to read that? Any questions or comments? Jeremy, I don't know if we are going to come up or not, but we may not have any questions for you anyways, but thank you for being here. Any questions for, okay, Councilor Booth, go ahead.
Through your worship to Jeremy. Jeremy, I'm just wondering if we can add one thing. I've read over multiple ICE allocation policies and whether we can have in the policy, what exactly is the hours for prime time and what exactly are the hours for non-prime time. That way, when people are looking at that, they can tell, you know, if prime time is from 4 to 11, or is it 5 to 11, or 5 to 10, or whatever?
Want to comment on that?
For you, Mr. Mayor, prime time is defined, when people go through the booking process. I don't have any objection to adding it to this document as well.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Councilor or Deputy Gilbert?
To you, Mayor Lobo, to Jeremy, just as a layman person here, we didn't have a policy before outlining it. That was the need, why it's here in front of us, that will assist everyone concerned. Is that it? Basically?
That's correct.
Thanks.
In my opinion, there was always sometimes be favorites.
Pardon me?
There could be favorites, or people perceived as getting an opportunity that others wouldn't. So by having the policy stated there, it's out there in front, people can understand it. That's a pretty good explanation.
That's a good explanation. Yeah, it's in keeping with what all municipalities are doing. Every municipality already has an ICE allocation policy or is implementing them, and it's just a clear communication of the fair and equitable distribution of ICE allocation across the township.
Okay, any further questions? Okay, I'll read the motion. That the committee of the whole received report PR 2025-09 ICE allocation policy for information, and that the committee of the whole recommended council that the ICE allocation policy for the township of Allen Haldeman be approved. Mover and a second. Moved by Deputy Mayor Stover, seconded by Councilor Ainsworth. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? The motion's carried, Jeremy. Okay. The next report we have for is the needs assessment for existing Haldeman Memorial Arena follow-up. That is needs assessment for existing Haldeman Memorial Arena follow-up 20 May 2025. Anybody have any questions or comments? Councillor O'Neill.
I actually want to pick up on something that John said to us this morning, that he thought our next step should be to take advice from the government on what best can be achieved. And so when we look at the community and sport community sport and recreation infrastructure fund, I know that we did make a stream 1 application earlier, but there are stream 2 options. Stream 1 is already closed, stream two. One place says it's remaining open and another one says it closed on Friday, so I'm not sure what that is or whether there's some differences. But when you go there, it does say that there are people whose jobs are regional development advisors. And they do recommend that we talk to these people, and there are webinars as well on the website. So I think I might watch the webinar myself, but I think it would be great if we could reach out to get our local person to come here as a regional development advisor. So could I make that motion then? Or do you want to wait for the discussion and come back?
Let's discuss it a little first, please. Councilor Ainsworth.
To you, Mayor. I just think in Jeremy's last report here, if you look on the background, it says where the arena is the most heavily used facility and continues to grow, prime time hours being almost booked up yearly. So the arena, we can have conversations about the arena versus other communities, but we need the arena. That's quite obvious.
Okay. You're kind of debating, I think. Do you have any questions for Jeremy before we start into that?
No, that's fine.
Deputy Mayor.
To you, Mayor Lobo, to Jeremy, what would you perceive as the next steps here moving forward?
My recommendation, for you, Mr. Mayor, is to proceed with the recommendations that's laid out in the presentation that you saw this morning from Sierra Planning and Management, short-term and the long-term.
Mayor Catherine, I need a second. Mayor Catherine did make a motion.
Sorry, can I qualify my motion slightly? So we have the recommendation that is in front of us that council directs staff to develop a funding model. Could we add in there, so the motion then reads that council directs staff to work with, what was the name of that person again? The regional development advisor. And then continuing on that recommendation as it reads, to develop a funding model and further recommendations to council to establish a roadmap for the medium and long-term recommendations as per the report.
Hoover. We can't make an amendment.
Sorry, but that can be the motion that is brought to the floor.
Yes.
So the motion I would like to bring to the floor is as it reads, with direct staff to, in conjunction with our regional development advisor.
May I ask a question first?
Now, when there's a motion on the floor, we should be.
Second it, so we can discuss it. Yeah, what do we?
Yes, we can't be asking Jeremy questions. Until the motion, pardon me, once the motion is made, we should not be asking Jeremy questions.
Yeah. So I'll second Mayor Catherine's motion. Now.
I don't think.
So that was second by Councilman Booth. Okay. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Lobo, if I may, to Jeremy. Would that be your normal practice anyway, to be going that route, Jeremy?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, just to clarify, which route?
It is to do with the direction in the motion. I wonder if we could have that motion read.
Basically, yes, we did. Go ahead.
So through this, Mayor, I also need clarity. What was the ministry that these advisors are from? Sorry.
Community sport and recreation infrastructure fund is where I'm getting it from their webpage.
It's tourism, culture and gaming, Emily.
Thank you.
Did you got your question answered?
Not yet. I'm just waiting for Matt Clerk to, he's a rocking on the keys.
So the motion is that committee of the whole receives support PR 2025-11 needs assessment for existing Haldeman Memorial Arena follow-up for information. And that the committee of the whole recommends to council, the council directs staff to investigate funding models and work with the regional development advisors of the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Gaming to carry out the immediate and short-term recommendations as outlined in the Haldeman Memorial Arena Needs Assessment Report. And that council directs staff to develop a funding model with further recommendations to council to establish a roadmap for medium and long-term recommendations as per the report.
Go ahead. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. So the question would be, is that your normal route that you would go for funding?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is certainly one of the avenues that we would take.
You would be
under
going
control,
there.
for sure, and we have actually been working with our regional development advisor through the funding application that Councillor O'Neill was referencing with the Stream 1 and the Stream 2. So there has been ongoing dialogue with our advisor for the Stream 1 application that we submitted last fall. I would also suggest that we would speak to more than just this one person and this one different provincial branch to look at as many different funding opportunities as we could.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Ainsworth.
To you, Mayor, I'm just kind of wondering if it's a little bit premature until we decide where we want to go with this, whether, you know, level 1 or level 2 or whatever. I mean, if we already have people that can advise us what we need to do and you know, we've already hired some grant writers, so I'm sure they have some information on where they get funds and stuff. I'm just wondering for right now, if that's just another added step and whether it's going to slow us down or cause us more issues.
Jeremy, do you want to comment on that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, sorry?
We're not debating, we're just asking.
Yeah. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I will say we applied for phase 1 last fall before it closed, which was a rehabilitation grant to invest in a floor replacement project. The province did notify all of us that phase 2 closed last Friday, May 16th, which was the new build stream up to $10 million grants, and those are match opportunities. Those were for shovel-ready projects, which we're not at yet, but that's the update on 1 and 2.
Go ahead, Councillor Green.
Through your worship, just a comment to say, I think it's prudent that we do this, Mike, is because as the person said today, if we're looking at a new build, we're looking at, it's probably 10 years out before, you know, somebody's going in the front of the building. So I think it's just asking staff to let's establish a roadmap and find out what exactly, you know, we're throwing out numbers, a third, or whatever, we don't know. If you look at Trent Hills, I looked at theirs last night, they were over 20 something million. They only got $8 million in total, which is less than half, right? So I think it's good that we have Jeremy in that look at it to come back to council to say, this is reality of what's happening right now. And I don't think it's going to hold up anything. Thank you.
I guess my only comment is that, you know, I'm glad to hear you're talking to the director and whatever. And that should be one of other people, many people, and I don't want to limit it to just that one.
Would that be included then to make an amendment to the motion? Or is that redundant because it's already happening?
No, I think we got a motion on it. We're going to approve that motion. I think we should amend it to open it up for other people to be consulted and rather than limiting to Jeremy to just the one person.
Thank you.
Chair Catherine?
I'm comfortable with that amendment. I was attempting to bring to the floor directly from what Jonathan recommended, that the next step should be to take advice from the government on what can best be achieved. So I'm picking up directly from the presentation this morning, and I do agree if we want to make that an add and other government, whoever, as appropriate.
Greg, are you
Yeah,
principal ready to accept that?
yeah, make it easy.
And I do agree with you, Councillor Booth. We don't want to keep pushing this back and back and make it stumbling block here again, so. Councillor Ainsworth.
Through you, Mayor, so just a question, is this something that staff would normally do? Or do we need a motion for that to happen?
I'm not sure what they would normally do. I don't have any problem with giving them that direction. I would hope they would do that, but I don't mind giving them that direction, and then we can go from there. Councillor O'Neill.
Well, if I could just through to Councillor Ainsworth, that actually did come up already in this meeting where they talked about if it's an ongoing policy, you don't need to give direction to staff, but when it's a one-off thing, which this is a one-off major grant application, I feel council does need to be giving direction on something like that.
Any further comments? So this was added on to, I thought we did have one, but anyways, you're willing to amend, Councillor O'Neill?
And others as need, as appropriate.
Application, agencies and sources. And other applications
Other
applicable, pardon me, agencies and sources.
as applicable, yeah.
Okay, so you're willing to amend your motion? Councillor Booth, you're willing to accept? Any further discussion? All in favor? Yes. All in favor of the amendment? That's carried. Then we have to go back to the original motion. That the committee of the whole received report PR 202509 ice allocation. I'll take that back. That the committee of the whole received report PR 2025-11 needs assessment for the existing Alderman Memorial Arena follow up for information, and that the committee of the whole recommend that the council direct staff to investigate funding models and work with the regional development advisor of the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Gaming and other applicable agencies and sources to carry out the immediate and short-term recommendations as outlined in the Holden Memorial Arena Needs Assessment Report, and further that the council directs staff to develop a funding model and further recommend to council to establish a roadmap for medium and long-term recommendations as per the report. Mover and a seconder. Moved by
Already
council.
been moved and seconded, we just need.
And we don't have to, okay. All in favor? That's carried. Next, we're going on to 9.3, Parks and Recreation and Facilities Department update. PR 2025-12, Parks, Recreation, Facilities Development Update 2025, Q1 for 2020. Okay, Jeremy, you have your report. Anything you want to highlight? Pretty straightforward, I think. Does anybody, member of council, have any questions? Councillor Ainsworth.
Good to see this, Jeremy, thank you. And I guess, like, I know there's a few in here that you don't have anything on as far as the date. And I would question, when we could maybe see that happening, or is it like an employee thing, or is it like in hours for you to get them done? I think because they're all important. And, I guess my question is that, is it a time thing for you? And I know we talked about employees when it came to the budget and stuff, but if we need to get some of these things done, you know, do we need to look at, you know, extra help? So I think as council, we need
Can you
to,
be a little bit more specific here?
well, when you look at some of these here, and they're not ready at the time of the report. So,
Some of the capital projects, is that what you're referring to?
yes. Yeah,
Okay, okay,
no, that's kind of my question. If, you know, if Jeremy needs help, I know, like I said, we changed some things around when it came to budget, but, you know, we need to get some of these things done. Well, yeah, so not up to date at the time of the review here, so the conduct internal property review and make necessary recommendations to council, so that would be, maybe Jeremy can clarify what each one of those are, because some of them are titled.
Jeremy, you have a comment?
Sure, so through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, there are a number of items on here still that, I have labeled as no update as of date of publication. This is a Q1 update, obviously, certainly, Councilor Ainsworth, to your point, resources and staffing are at a premium, and that, you know, is part of the reason why some of these things haven't been actioned on. I would say I'm probably slightly biased when I look at it. I think this is pretty good for a department of our size. This many updates for just Q1. I think certain things like looking at boat launches and stuff that is seasonal. So we're kind of, you know, Q2, Q3. When we would get to that, there has been a lot of priority sequencing going into some of this stuff, things like baseball diamond seating, bleachers, and air conditioning projects. Those were front loaded for the year because, you know, we wanted that stuff in place for the summer when it's going to be utilized most. So certainly not everything has been completed in Q1, nor do I think it should be designed that way. So yeah, more staff would help get things done more quickly, but with the resources that we are kind of plotting the entire 2025 plan to be carried out over the 12 months.
Good. I was asking you this morning, and I just got to clarify, did you, are we sending approval, are you getting approvals from the council to go ahead and purchase some of those things? Like, for example, the seating at the arena, or the ball diamonds?
The bleachers.
The bleachers, yes.
So sorry, I'm getting approval on the budget enhancement request forms, specifically like through the budget process, or the individual. Do you mean the individual seating unit itself?
What I'm referring to is when we go in order to fulfill our procurement bylaw, I believe it has to come to council, anything over $25,000. I just want to make sure that's happening.
Yeah, anything over 25,000 would be coming forward. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Councilor Booth.
Through your worship, so just to expand on that, because I see through your report, Jeremy, it talks about the ACC unit, which I think we budgeted 35,000, and it says it's been ordered. So I guess I'm a little concerned to see, are we going to see the RFP the same as the benches, which is $40,000? So we should be seeing that too, the RFP that went out and the bids. And even the card system, which I believe we budgeted $27,000 for. So hopefully we'll receive that soon, I guess, from you, reports on who we decided to go with or whatever.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So for things like the ACC project, for example, the budgeted amount for the entire project was $35,000, which includes a rooftop unit in one half of the building, a ductless heat pump unit in another part. So the overall components all add up to 35. but the individual, pieces, none of them are over that actual $25,000 threshold.
I guess through your worship, would it be one contractor doing it all though, or are you having different contractors come in and?
Not necessarily. I went out for multiple quotes on the individual pieces.
Okay. So I guess that could be something we could look into, but I guess the benches, which was $40,000, would come in, and the card system. I'm just concerned that in our procurement policy, it does say that anything $25,000 or more has to come to council for final approval, just so that we see the bids and that we make sure that it's open and transparent.
I'm not sure if you're aware of that or not.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yep, okay,
Oh, Mayor Lobo.
yes.
To you, Mayor Lobo, just in listening to the discussion and our procurement policy, is it stated per item or per job, I guess? And when I listened about the ACC unit, that was two separate units where each one was not over the 25,000. So that certainly would be keeping in the way our policy reads. Is that correct?
I'm not familiar with the policy to be able to comment on that. I would caution you, Deputy Mayor, that we wouldn't do it in our township, but I have heard some ones where they will doctor it up to put in this case, order two things and actually going into the same thing and that not being clear. So you understand what I'm saying?
I understand, but that was my intention of my question.
Okay.
But anyway, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Councilor Booth?
I can answer that for you. It actually states in the policy that you can't break the bills up. So if it was two different or three different companies that bid on it and they're doing that, that's fine. But if you put out an RFP and one company wins it all, then that should be coming to council. You're not allowed to break up RFPs like that so that you come under the 25,000.
Councilor O'Neill, would you comment? Julie?
I have a comment and a question. So the comment is, out of the things that I saw on the list of things accomplished in the first, that jumped out at me as a fantastic step forward is the ActiveNet for registering for programs and being able to pay for things. So huge step forward on that one. And I hope that it in turn also generates some more data, because that's where my question is on the next one. Where are the statistics for the 24-25 arena usage? I guess better question, when can we expect to see the statistics for the 24-25 arena usage?
So that would be for the first quarter.
Second.
No, it would be January, February, March, so that would be reporting for the first quarter. Go ahead.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly ActiveNet has been a great addition to our recreational department. Unfortunately, the arena and the ball diamonds haven't been utilizing the ActiveNet software. We haven't gone into that level of agreement with ActiveNet. There's a financial implication that I think you can expect to see in the future, a report coming from our department about using ActiveNet for the arena and ball diamonds, but because of the magnitude of the financial piece that's involved there, it will come before council. The 2024 arena stats are located somewhere within the 82-page document from Sierra Planning and Management. I didn't include them in this, but I'll happily include them with the Q2 update, which I will just kind of keep reworking and revising this template that I've created here for the department update.
Any other, go ahead, Councilor Easley.
Through you, Mayor, just a question for all of us. So we have that money in the account for the Noat Sanctuary, right? So there's an item there that we could, if we could get, some movement on that. And can we use that money to get Jeremy some help to complete some of these other things that he's got down here? Because here we are coming right into the heart of the summer. And I'd like to see our two beaches down Lake Ontario, you know, Chuck Point and Wicklow Beach. You know, I'd like to see that cleaned up properly and looked after properly, and some washrooms down there, some portable stuff. And, you know, can we dip into that reserve to help Jeremy get some of these done?
Is it part of the budget? Like, where's the money coming from?
Which money are we talking about?
Well, it sounds like we're putting washrooms down at beach, or we're considering putting washrooms down at Wicklow Beach and Tom Point.
Sandy Bay.
Pardon
Also Sandy Bay.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, there are, two portable washrooms seasonal located at the Wicklow boat launch. To answer the question, is it in the budget? There's a $20,000 Nawatin Sanctuary maintenance dollar in the budget.
Okay.
I don't know if that's the money that Councillor Ainsworth is talking about.
Part of it. So you are planning on spending the $20,000, and that's as far as it'll take you. Is that correct?
Sure. I wasn't planning on
No, I don't.
washrooms at Chuck Point or at Sandy Bay or anything out of that money.
But there was, sorry, Mayor, but there is an excessive amount of money in that reserve for the Parks and Rec that came out of that sale. Not just the 20,000, there was like, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, about 384,000.
Well, if we're going to spend that, we would have to come to council.
Yeah.
Councilor.
Through your worship, just to explain something that was at last council, that money is for the Nawatin Sanctuary. It's not to be spent up at Chuck Point or anywhere else. That was specifically set aside because those residents didn't want us to sell it, and we sold it, and we promised that that money would go towards the cost. So it's not the operational cost that Jeremy's talking about. That was like the bridge or the dredging or whatever that was specifically for Nawatin.
I think we're way off his Q1 report here.
Like you are right. Anybody else?
Just a comment, I just wanted to say thank you, Jeremy, because I know I've done these before, these budget things, and to be honest with you, the 5 or 6 that he has there, to have 3 or 4 of them done by now, and it's only May or June, is fantastic, because I didn't get some of mine done till September or October, it depends. So he's obviously picked the ones that are important to get done. And the chimney and the roof and that are something that, you know, can happen. So I just want to congratulate you that I'm surprised you got that much done already. So thank you.
And I guess the other comment on it, I will make is with similar years, or some of them have been around there for more than a year, more than a couple of years. And the fact that you're making headway on any of them is very pleasing. So continue to keep it up. Mike?
Well, through you, Mayor. No, I agree. I agree that this report is good. I'm just looking at, you know, we've always talked about help for Jeremy. You know, he's under the gun with that. And, you know, we got money there for the Nawatin Sanctuary. That's something that we could put a project together to see where we're going to use it, whether we need to fix it, you know, fix the bridges, clean it up, spray the poison ivy, whatever that is. But there's money there, so maybe that's something that we could see a report come back on.
Okay. Is that possible, Jeremy?
Sure, that's possible. Just for clarity, the sale of the property report from council a couple years ago was to allocate 20,000 into the Nawatin fund and put the rest into the Parks and Rec reserves. So that's where it currently sits. So yeah, I'm happy to bring forward any report if you want me to look at large projects to spend some of that money. I'm happy to bring reports forward for you.
Thank you. the recommendation is that the committee of the whole receive report PR 2025-12 Parks and Recreation and Facilities Department update for the first quarter of 2025 for information. Mover and seconder. Moved by Deputy Mayor Stover, seconded by Councillor Booth. Further discussion? Yes.
Through you, Mayor, can we add to that the money that we have for the Nawatin Sanctuary? To come back in a report for, you know, for the immediate, you know, what I'm looking for, but, you know, to go down, let's
Well, we can do that after we approve this motion, because this has nothing to do with Jeremy's report.
Okay.
All in favor of the motion? That's carried. Do you have another motion?
Yes, I do, Mayor. So I'd like to make a motion that we use the Nawatin reserve money to come back with a report for the remedial work down there.
Up to $20,000.
Well,
$20,000.
I mean, the bridge is gonna cost more than that probably, right?
Yep.
So we need
So
to.
that's going to have a separate, I consider that needs a separate budget and everything.
Yeah,
But are you talking about remedial stuff? Or are you talking about the bridge?
well, just the remedial work in there, like I mean, if we've been, now so we're in our third year here and we haven't even touched it, so we need to get looking at that.
That's only partially true, because I know that we are doing, there's some work down there.
Well, obviously,
Yeah.
there's some remedial work that needs to be done there.
And remedial up and update them.
Yeah.
So that's the same to me, but anyways. Councilor Booth.
Through you, your worship, maybe we could get clarification though, Mike, before we do that, because I know the comment you made, Jeremy. I believe the money was put into the Parks and Rec thing, but the intention was it's to be used. And I could be wrong, because it was last council that it was to be, was it? So it was to be used for Nawatin. I think what you're confusing is we do have $20,000 this year for remedial work, like branches and wood chips and stuff like that and everything like that. Let's go ahead with that. But I think what you're looking at, Councillor Ainsworth, is something that should go to the committee that you're on, the Nawatin people, to say, how are we going to spend this money wisely? And in consultation with Stefan and Lower Trent to say, what is it to build a bridge? What is it to do this and that, so that we're spending that money? I just don't want to jump at things to say, let's go spend the money because we have it. Let's spend the $20,000 that he has for operational stuff, and let's plan out the other $100,000 or $200,000.
Before we continue on, because we're debating, I need a second here for Mike's. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, as for a point of clarity, so Councilor Answers, you're asking for a report on the use of the Nawatin, the funds from the Nawatin property sale and possible projects for this year that could be accomplished. Is that the intent of your?
Okay.
Okay. So you've got that moved by Councilor Ainsworth, but you don't have a second.
Did everybody hear that? Can you repeat that?
The general intent is that staff bring a report on the use of the sale of the Nawatin property funds and possible projects for this year.
Got a mover, Mike, seconder? Your second? Okay. Any further discussion? Councilor O'Neill.
I don't disagree with the intent of this, but I think this is a circumstance where it would make sense to use our notice of motion powers that we have as council to really think this through, really think through the wording of this kind of a motion and bring it back that way, where all of the things that you're looking for are spelled out, what the relationship is with the committee that we have and how they will be integrated into this. I just think if we bring this back with a little more thought, we will make a better motion.
Okay, good point. We already got the motion on the floor. Go ahead, Councilor.
Just to agree, I think since you're on the committee, Mike, I think it would really make sense if you're going to go through with this, which I have no problem, is that staff talk to the committee, especially those people on the Nawatin, so that they have a say too, instead of staff just saying, this is what we're looking at, and then they're going to feel left out. So if you're including the committee, I'm all for it before you do the report.
Deputy Mayor.
Through you, Mayor Lobo, and the only addition I would add is that the minutes that are dealing with how that money was being utilized be included in the report as well.
That's from the original.
From the sale and how the money was to be portioned out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can we add that to the motion? Okay. That'll be part of the background of the report that's going to go to the council.
Thank you.
What are you okay with that? Okay. Any further comments? All in favor? Motion carried. And I see we have a visitor here this afternoon. So we're going to step into closed at this time, so I'll take a motion to go into closed. Moved by Councilman. Oh. Thanks, Jerry. Just to clarify for everyone, we are going into close, but there's still several items left on the agenda. And once we finish close, we'll go be going back to the. We can make the motion to go into close, so I can. Yep. Well, I'm going to read the resolution that we read in the closed session. It is recommended that the committee of the whole meeting of May 20th, 2025 move into a closed session under section 239, the labor relations or employee relations for a trade secret or scientific, technical, or commercial, financial, or labor relations information supplied to confidence to the municipality or local board, which, if disclosed, could reasonably be expected to prejudice significantly the competitive position of or interfere significantly with the contractual or other negotiations of a person, group of persons, or organization. A position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instructions to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipal or local board. And this is regarding union negotiations update. Can I get a move in a second? Moved by Councilman Booth, seconded by. Get a seconder. Seconded by Councilor O'Neill. All in favor? Motion's carried. We're now in close.
For members of the public that are watching online, if you could please leave the meeting. We will have to lock the meeting down while we are in close, but when the meeting is released, we will be able to open it. You'll be able to rejoin. If I do have to remove you, unfortunately, you won't be able to. So I encourage you this time and just keep checking back to see when the meeting becomes unlocked. Thank you.
Reporting out of closed. Council met in closed session to receive a union negotiation update report. Can I get a mover and second for that? Moved by Councilor Booth, seconded by Councilor Ainsworth. All in favor? Motion's carried. And we're back in open. You want to take a break now?
Great, thank you.
Can I get mover and seconder to break at 1:05, 1:06? And we'll be back in 1:30, or is that giving enough time? 1:35. 1:35? All in favor? Mover and seconder, please. Moved by Deputy Mayor Stover, seconded by Councilor Booth. All in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Okay. We're gonna move on to Public Works and Infrastructure report. Before we do that, we are past the 1:30, so I'll need a motion that we continue on. Moved by Councilor Booth, seconded by Councilor O'Neill. That we continue on past the 1:30 timeline. All in favor? Carried. This afternoon, we have Stefan here to join us, and the first one he's going to talk about is the road upgrades on Leach Road. So you want to take us through? Sure.
Stefan?
So through you, Mr. Mayor. So all this is just a proposal from the Leach families to perform the necessary municipal upgrades to the roadway. So that if they do everything to our proper processes and procedures, that the road could be assumed, making them eligible to receive a building permit potentially eligible, I should state, for a building permit to be issued so they could build a residence. That seems to be the purpose of the proposal.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Stefan from Council? Seeing none, it's pretty straightforward, but just hold on in case something comes up. Mary Catherine, you have a comment?
It's not necessary.
Well, we need to move it a second if we're gonna.
Oh, no, it is a question.
Oh,
but it's-
okay.
It's not exactly your piece of the pie, but are all of these lots that are in your diagram, do you happen to know whether they're all zoned rural residential? You don't. Didn't think it was your question. Just in case you.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, no, I don't have access to that information.
Anybody else have any questions or comments? Need a mover and a seconder? And which one are you moving?
The first one,
Okay,
can it be accepted?
moved by
Councilor
Councilor Booth. Seconder, seconded by Councilor O'Neill. Any discussion? Go ahead, Councilor Booth.
Do you worship, to Stefan, just a quick question. I'm looking at the drawing. And the extension is going down. Is coming from George Road, right? Down Leach?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, so it won't be exactly at George Road, but that's a good way to get an idea of where they are. They will be working on basically just south of George Road, where the road is assumed, and then 200 meters to the south from there.
And I guess another question through you, your worship, are they doing then a roundabout or something, or they're not going right through, right down to Harper? No.
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Mayor, so I haven't received any specific engineering details or anything or that of those forms. I haven't received them yet, but we typically do require some sort of a turnaround with a proper radius that could accommodate, and the two big ones are garbage and our snowplows. So.
Okay, good, thank you. Could they extend it past the 200, and would that be more expensive for them rather than turnaround?
I wouldn't know the exact cost calculations, but just any additional space that they would have to do would be an increased cost for them. And we typically, what I've seen and I guess prior instances of these types of developments, they'll just develop the frontage in front of their property.
Okay. In this case, don't they have to go on the one prior? Or am I misunderstanding that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So I believe there's one property to the north of them that they would be covering a portion of it, but yes, they would be responsible for that cost to get it up to their property because that's what's needed to be developed.
Does it go, and I thought it went to the end of their property, like the full frontage?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that's what I've been requiring, full frontage.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions or comments? So it's been moved and seconded that we would go to number 1. All in favor? That's carried. Next we have Stefan again for the 2025 annual surface treatment program. And this is for gravel supply quotations. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Stefan? Seeing none, can I get a mover to seconder? Moved by Councilor Booth, seconded by Deputy Mayor Stolberg. Any further questions? Will this all be used for, is this being used for graveling the new roads or updating our roads, gravel roads, or is it some for construction?
Yep, so through you, Mr. Mayor, it's strictly for the surface treatment program. That is where the gravel will be applied on those roadways there.
Okay. Thank you. I'll read the resolution then. That the committee of the whole recommend to council that council authorize the mayor and the clerk to award the 2025 gravel supply quotation to Finley Construction for a value of $234,950 plus HST, and that bylaw be brought forward for consideration to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign and execute a purchase agreement with Finley Construction to supply and deliver the 2025 gravel supply. Can I get a mover? Oh, I already hit it. Greg's already moved it, seconded by Joan. I have one question. How do we determine whether the gravel is of good quality or different qualities? Is that possible?
Yep, so through you, Mr. Mayor, so there's some visual techniques you can use just to see if there's enough, I guess, fines within the material. So you'll see your coarser aggregates and they really won't lock together. More technical analysis would be to perform a sieve analysis. And then that way we have a certain percentage breakdown of each particle size, and then there'll be the allowable proportion. So we can ask those information to be provided, so.
And do we?
I don't believe at this time, but normally our guys have a pretty good idea with their visual analysis of the material that they're getting is subpar, and we can typically call the quarry and give them an idea of, you know, hey, we need things to be mixed or a bit more fines to the material, so we're getting a better quality product.
Thank you. All in favor? It's carried. And, no, 11. 11. Administrative reports, the 2025 annual repayment limit. I think you're free.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Here, coming up.
Aaron's gonna talk to us about our annual repayment limit. Please go ahead.
Through your mayor, this one's pretty standardized. It's a report that comes every year to council, just letting you know where we sit with our repayment and our debt associated with it. So right now, as you can see, our debt is very low, even with our two debentures for the public works and fire station.
And we're about 4% of where we. Is that 4% of where we could be? Or,
That's where we are.
oh, that's where we are. We could go up to 25%. However, I've never seen it recommended that we go any more. I think 10% is basically where they start questioning a lot of questions.
Sorry, what was that number there?
10%. And maybe that's even, they look at it pretty close when you get too far, very close. Okay, anybody have any questions, further questions? I'll read the resolution. It's recommended the committee of the whole receive report FIN 2025-02 20525 annual repayment limit for information. Mover to second. Moved by Deputy Mayor Stoller, seconded by Councilor Ainsworth. Any further discussion? Yes, go ahead, please.
It's not a discussion, but an observation that you mentioned about they start to look at it very closely. Actually, on those grant applications, that is one of the things they say they look at for municipalities, so.
Thank you. Any other comments? All in favor? That's carried. Next, we have March 2025 quarter one financial reporting. And thank you, Darren, for putting this together for us. I know you've been busy, but I appreciate your effort. Anybody have any questions regarding this report? Mayor Coffey, go ahead.
I do concur with you, Mayor Lovell, that you are wearing about 4 different hats, and as such, we're not maybe going to get as in-depth a thing, but as a councillor, I would like to see variances and explanations coming forward. You know, it is our job to make sure that everything is as it's supposed to be. So, and you know, that can be as we move forward, and I know we are going to get extra person in treasury, and that should help immensely with that. But a very specific question beyond that, the well, I know we've got some timelines on that have to be met in order to be able to access that grant money. So I'm just double checking that that hasn't fallen off the radar and we're on target for all of those critical dates.
Through your mayor, with the water department, where the well lies, Councillor O'Neill is correct that we do have some dates. We were fortunate to find out, even with the delay, that we still have quite a bit of time, as we don't have to actually finish the project till 2026. It's just cleaner instead of floating the money over and over and over again.
Yeah, I noticed. Brought that up with my kids, so I'm following.
Good. Anybody else have any questions or comments? I need a mover to second that the committee of the whole. I'll read the give another opportunity. Committee of the whole received report FIN 2025-04 for the March 2025 quarter one financial report for information. So I can move in second. Moved by Deputy Mayor Stover. Seconded by Councillor Booth. Any questions or comments? Councillor O'Neill.
Are there any numbers in there you would like to flag for council which are above or below, and we need to be aware of that and making adjustments?
Currently in Q1, I did not find any that were really outstanding as of this time. I will make note that when I did pull these reports, we just had uploaded the budget as well. And I did see, if you look under the planning department capital,
there is one for computer equipment. It says 00. It is actually supposed to be 2,500. It is just an update in our system regarding the total budget. So it was just one that was missed, but other than that, everything seems to look okay, and all reports have gone out to the managers as well to oversee their own budget.
Thank you. Further questions or comments? I made the comment to county council, first quarter, you kind of get a feel for it. But when we get moving on further, then we gotta pay a little bit more attention to all of that. So you're off the hook. All in favor? That's carried. Next, we have a report regarding Battle Shield Industries community donation. It is recommended the committee of the whole receive report CLK 2025-11 Battle Shields Industries community donation for information. Can I get a move over? You have any, Aaron, you're handling this one? Emily's handling this one. Okay. Emily, does anybody have any questions for Emily regarding this? I'll take a move in a second, or I'll read the motion first. The committee of the whole recommend to council that staff be authorized to solicit applications from eligible organizations for the $1,000 Battle Shield Industry Community Donation, and that these applications be presented to council for consideration and award at a future meeting. You're pointing at this. Okay. I'll start. It is recommended the committee of the whole receive report CLK 2025-11 for Battle Shields Industry Community Donation for information, and that the committee of the whole recommend to council that staff be authorized to solicit applications from eligible organizations for the $1,000 Battle Shield Industry Community Donation, and that these applications be presented to council for consideration and awarded at a future meeting. Mover and a seconder. Moved by Deputy Mayor Stover, second by Councilor Ainsworth. Do we have any discussion? Go ahead, Councilor O'Neill.
Through you to the clerk, any chance that this process could see the award given out at the Canada Day celebrations, or is that too tight a timeline?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that'd be a pretty tight turnaround because we have to take it to council on June 10th for final approval. And then, and then next meeting would be after, I believe. It would be tight. Yeah, it would be tight, unfortunately.
But if we get it, we wouldn't kick it. We wouldn't kick it at all, actually.
It's good to hear, thanks. Reassurance.
Any more questions or comments? I think it's a good idea if we can do that, Mayor Captain. All in favor? Motion's carried. Next, we have 11.4, an agreement extension for the Burnley Pit agricultural use. That the committee of the whole recommended council that a bylaw be brought forward for consideration to authorize the mayor and clerk to enter into a 1-year extension agreement for $50 per acre with Pat McLaren to seed and cultivate crops for the 2025 season at the Burnley Pit property, and that council authorize staff to issue a request for proposal for the lease of the 12 acres at the Burnley Pit for the period of 2026 to 2030. Mover and seconder. Moved by Councilor Booth, seconded by Deputy Mayor Stover. Any discussion? I guess my only question would be, we can do that request for a proposal anytime, can't we? Rather than wait till March or April of 2026 when we get into problems again. So that's good to see if we're going to do that. Get it lots of time. Oh, go ahead, Mary Catherine.
I would actually say, from the farmer's point of view, they want to know that by the beginning of March, so we can work back in our calendar from there.
Yep. Anytime. Actually. All in favor? Motion's carried. Communications, Ontario Headwaters Institute. We need to talk about the watershed security. And correspondence was received from Ontario Headwaters Institute. We received for information. Can I get through in a second? Moved by Councilor O'Neill, seconded by Councilor Booth. Any discussion? Councilor O'Neill.
I just really see a recurring theme coming up with it's on the Housing Solutions workshop. It's from the provincial press releases that they've just given out. It came up this morning with the archaeological thing, this coordination for planning aligns with what we're hearing from everyone else. So that would be my only observation.
Any other questions or comments? That the correspondence from the Ontario Waters Institute be received for information. Mover in a second. All in favor? That's carried. I voted back in terms of the council meeting. Following. Okay, we're going to move on to number 14, motion to adjourn. With the committee of the whole meeting held on May 20th, 2025, be adjourned at 1:55 p.m. President Hoover and seconded, moved by Councilor Booth. Seconded by Councilor Ainsworth. All in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you, everyone. Have a safe day. We'll see you back here next week.